Again, you piano fanatics and sickos out there. We're here at another episode of
PSI. Marc and Elmer's PSI.
Yes, Marc and Elmer's PSI.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Piano scene investigation.
He's
but
Elmer.
You all know about it.
He's Elmer.
Yeah, he's Marc.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway,
this is Grogu.
Grogu. Yeah, that's right. You know, I keep forgetting his name. How do you? I mean, I don't watch the show.
It's Grogu. Grogu. But I think Grogu is okay. It's
how you spell?
Grobu.
Grobu.
Yeah. His ancestor times 10, great times 10, was Yoda.
It's Yoda.
Yeah.
So it's not Yoda, but it's a relative of his.
Yeah. Removed many times.
Wow.
But same species.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're a complete race then.
Yeah, they're chi masters eventually. Have it within them, really become very powerful.
Wow.
Chi masters. He was specifically, when the Empire took over the galaxy again, he was one of the little kid students at the Jedi Academy.
Okay.
Which Darth Vader actually personally attacked, had the children killed, but he escaped.
He escaped?
Yeah. And
really?
maybe a few others did as well, but most of the kids actually murdered them. Yeah, not a good story.
Not a good story. That's so sad.
He escaped. And
Does
he ends up in the care of a Mandalorian. I think it's either Boba Fett or some guy related to Boba Fett. I forget.
Okay.
It's his son or something like that. But
so does Boba Fett look anything like him, or
no? He's a human ish.
Mandalorian.
He's a humanoid. Mandalorian. They're actually. I don't watch. They're fighters, kind of in the tradition of Japanese samurai, but they're not that. But they learn how to really fight and protect people. And they were their own group of people, and the Mandalorians were kind of like the private security force, or the people's security force to protect things. But again, the Empire kind of wiped them out, like they did a lot of things.
Okay.
At some point, we got. Is that on Disney or Paramount? I forget which. Maybe it was Disney. I tried them for a little while. I got to Paramount for a while because of the Picard 3-season show, because I really wanted to see that. And it was okay. And then I started watching that, is it called Star Trek Discovery, maybe, with the black lady who eventually becomes, I think, the captain of the ship.
Okay.
That was kind of good, actually.
Okay. So is the Mandalorian still on?
And the Mandalorian is his Star Wars stuff.
Okay.
So one of those two things, either Disney or Paramount, or which, I think it's Disney.
Okay.
They actually had a list where they recommended watching all the Star Wars stories in appropriate timeline order.
Okay.
And it was pretty cool because there's been a lot of them. I don't remember how many, but various series. Some of them are anime.
Yeah.
And or cartoon kind of things.
Right.
And the other ones are full film versions.
Huh.
Mandalorian was cool because turns out Jon Favreau. Do you know who he is?
Yes, I do know Jon Favreau.
He's
who
a
he is.
major Star Wars fan.
Oh, I
And
always thought you were going to tell me he was
he
in.
actually created with some other guy. Could have been J.J. Abrams together, the two of them, but Jon Favreau did a lot of the writing and most of the directing. At least for the
Really?
first season.
Favreau did?
Yeah.
Wow!
And it's a pretty cool story. It's pretty good. Especially how that relationship develops and over time, how Grogu grows in his powers and things.
Wow.
He's kind of an interesting character because he has it within him to be like Yoda,
Okay.
like the master of master Jedis,
All right.
because it's in their nature to connect with the Force that way. And even as a little infant, he starts to really develop some amazing powers by what I saw as the end of the series. But I kind of finally stopped watching, but I think, what's her name? Roseanne Dawson, I think, or something. Roxanne Dawson?
Rosario.
Rosario Dawson, is it?
Yeah.
She,
I've heard the name. I don't know what she is.
I forget what her series is called, but she's a Jedi Knight.
Okay.
But of a certain kind of species, I forget what they're called.
Huh.
They have that big extension off of their head that looks like a big hat or a leg or something, that hangs down.
Okay.
But anyway, she's that species. I watched that, I think it was 2 seasons, and then it was done. But I understand from some advertising they've continued to add stuff to some of these shows. There was really amazing history. I mean, going through the whole thing, because where the original Star Wars pops up, and then the subsequent films, like George Lucas did, those are down the ways away from the beginning. The beginning is the one with Liam Neeson. And his the other guy. Liam Neeson is like the Jedi Master. And then I forget who the Scottish actor is.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
He's Obi-Wan Kenobi. He becomes eventually the old guy in the first Star Wars show.
Yeah.
That's Obi-Wan. And there's there's like really couple good animated ones called Attack of the Clones or something of the Clones. Yeah. And this is about the clone army, but some of them had within them some kind of genetic default that made them turn against the Empire. That they started to think for themselves and see what they were doing, and their inner humanness turned them against being ordered to do what they were doing. They broke off. That was a really good series. That was animated, but the characterizations and the stories and stuff were really good.
Cool.
Pretty amazing. I mean, all of the inventiveness. The one that I didn't care for, no offense or anything, but it was primarily a Japanese-made animated one. It's a little soft with the characters, you know what I mean? How that stuff could be sometimes. And the humor was a little not always funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
And the storyline was kind of... But it was really cool how they tied, the strings together through all of these different stories made by entirely different people in many cases, and just told the whole thing all the way through. A lot of them conferred with George Lucas as they created their ideas and planned to do it. And I think he may have had a very strong influence on the overall arching story with the characters and things. Wow. Because people who are like teenagers or children, especially in animated stuff, 1 or 2 series later, now they're grown up, but it's the same person.
Wow.
And you get to see continuity of their life and what they're doing. It's pretty cool. I watched it all the way through to the very end, and then at some point I gotta let it go. I've kept Peacock, which is NBC's internet thing.
Yeah.
They actually have some pretty decent stuff on there. Some cool stuff. I haven't run out of seeing things on there yet. But otherwise, I use Prime and its attendant satellite stations and things like that.
So
that had nothing to do about piano, but doesn't everybody love Star Wars?
Oh, I do. Definitely the music. So, you were going to give us your review on this CD. Remember the CD from the last time? Yeah, I'll show it to the folks. This is the debut CD recording of Velodos. He was a young man back then.
Arkady Velodos. Who interestingly was not a competition winner.
Yep.
In this day and age. And the way it turned out was who's the famous Columbia Records
shooter guy? Frost. Thomas Frost. He was working for Sony.
He was working for Sony in Paris. And somebody said, you gotta hear this guy, really hear this guy. I think you want to record this guy. And they went over to his house, and Frost was standing outside listening to him practice or play the piano. And he didn't even go in the house. He just said, yeah, we got to get this on record.
He was already decided.
He already decided standing outside. Yeah. So this is an interesting debut album because it's all transcriptions.
Yeah.
And it starts with, there are 4 versions of it, but the 1968, which is 3 years after his return to Carnegie Hall, after a 12-year hiatus. Yeah. Horowitz's Bizet, Carmen Fantasy. He did 4 different versions of it, and this one seems to be the one that, like, that's the one she plays.
That's the one she plays, yeah.
I think I talked about him a little bit, but see, and the unfortunate thing is, as I said, as I was being a musician and doing my career and doing my life and everything, I didn't have a lot of time to pay attention to what else is going on. It reminds me of an Arthur Rubinstein. They interviewed him. It might have been the Robert McNeil interview. Yeah. So what do you do with your time now? Because he's considerably older. Yeah. He said, well, now I'm listening to records. I'm listening to string quartets and symphonies and stuff. I never had time to do that. I mean, this guy played, on average, a concert every other day for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, on average, there's 150 or more concerts a year. That's in 356 days, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about one almost every other day. At least since the Second World War IV.
Probably.
For 30 years or something, and then all the recordings and everything. So I get that. And that was really true. But so I had my records. I started to collect a few CDs. Now I've got a ton of them. But my tendency has always been, probably because I spent a lot of time growing up with my grandparents, and just having this innate fascination for the past.
Oh, yeah.
Really. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what all that is, but I mean, for me now, it goes into truly ancient human past. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking caveman stuff, but more the kind of scientific research that's going on to show how far human civilization actually goes back.
Yeah.
It was way different than we used to think. And even then, if it wasn't like high civilization, there were definitely organized communities and things. There's a famous place, Göbekli Tepe, in Turkey, which they've been excavating since the 80s.
Yeah.
The German guy finally died, I think, 2014, who'd started it. But this is an enormous complex with amazing constructions and carvings and all this stuff in a period which was supposedly back in hunter-gatherer days. It could have been built by hunter-gatherers, but it's some kind of a temple complex more than it was a permanently lived in all the time place. But they know, because of dating, that goes back to around 13,000 BC. So that is just before or around the time of those 2 ice ages. There was one around between 13 and 12,000, and another one at 9,000. We were coming out of another one before that, and this was like the latter part of the thawing out period for a long time. And then I'm reading a book by Robert Schoch, Schoch. He's geologist, professor of geology at Boston University. He's famous especially for having completely rewritten the history of the Sphinx from a geological point of view, dating it quite differently than Egyptologists do, and placing it much farther back in time because of the nature of the rocks and the erosion of the rocks and how that would have happened and so forth. But he's writing a book about, it has a little bit more to do with solar activity and its effect on the planet. And I think that we're seeing that, interestingly, that we're in a interesting time right now.
Sure. Yeah.
But anyway, I got way off track, of course.
We're
like I
talking
always
about
do.
Lodos.
We're talking about Lodos. So what's amazing about this is it's all transcriptions.
Yep.
Some of them are his own. He does a wonderful one on Mozart.
That's Turkish. Yeah.
But he plays some of Prokofiev's own transcriptions from his orchestral scores. Cinderella. Some Rachmaninoff song transcriptions. Franz Liszt. And they are not just impeccably played. Impeccably isn't even the right word.
Yeah.
Freely and almost improvisationally played with a freshness that makes it seem like he's making it up in the moment.
Yeah.
But it's faultless playing.
It is.
There's no mistakes. And what's there more is a sense of color and voicing, one might say even instrumentation in a way. I said this about him before, but it's interesting because he wanted to be a conductor.
Yeah.
And he actually entered the conservatory as a singer.
Yep.
But his plan was to study conducting and maybe some composition.
Yeah.
It was he had everybody in school has to take piano proficiency.
Yeah.
And the piano guy said, "You sure you don't want to be a piano major? Because apparently he could play well." And that's how he did it. Fortunately, because he could be an interesting conductor, and Barenboim did it.
Oh yeah.
Bruno Walter was a pianist before he became a conductor.
Ashkenazi.
It's possible with time he could do it. Ashkenazi, it's a more recent example. Yeah. I think you have to have the ear for being able to take a huge instrument like the orchestra and make the, really, not just interpretation, but also the colors and things, and, really be able to convince people to do what you'd like them to do. But it's an amazing recording. I'd like to look up a copy for myself, just to have it, because it's really delightful playing. I mean, in every sense, it reminds me of the best of the old-fashioned pianist guys that I admire so much. It's not, let's put it this way, it's modern playing.
Yeah.
But it has a certain kind of flexibility and lots of imagination.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll just put it this way. I'd rather hear him play the Bizet, Carmen Fantasy, than Yuja.
Exactly.
Yuja plays fabulously.
Yes.
She plays all the Schiffer stuff. He plays Schiffer. He plays the Flight of the Bumblebee with those octaves.
Yeah.
How does he do that? I mean, honestly, to play the and doing that vertically like this, it seems to me almost physically impossible to do them that fast.
But at the same time, he comes up with a different instrument. I mean, every time something new happens like that thing, that what you were just talking about, it sounds like a different instrument.
Yeah. It's in different places on the piano, and then sometimes it's single notes, and sometimes it's octaves.
And sometimes there's chords there.
There's chords involved in it, too.
Yes. So.
Really, if you've never heard Arkady Lodos, you should give this guy a chance and listen to him, because he's certainly one of the most imaginative and brilliant pianists I've heard that's living in the world presently. And interestingly, he did it himself. Yeah. He didn't win any competitions or anything like that. He just is so damn good that a recording engineer said, oh, this is Thomas Frost.
Thomas Frost.
Used to be for RC or Columbia, I forget which
There it
one,
is.
who did Arthur Rubinstein's last set of Chopin recordings. He must have been an old guy by the time he did this.
Yeah.
But that's quite a legacy.
Yeah. I find his playing miraculous, really. I mean, how do you even begin to even think this way? And much less put it here.
Well, what I like too is that, you know, the big transcriptions and big showy offy kind of stuff. It's never pounds.
Never hits.
It's never ugly. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I've talked about one particular Russian pianist too. that has always kind of disturbed me a little bit sometimes, about just the nature of the way he made the sound. That could have been a Soviet thing at the time, because that's not the way the Russian school was at one time.
Yeah.
And I've started to read our book for next week.
Yes, absolutely.
And
look at that line. Boy, yours is a different color.
Levine talks all about the beauty of the tone and how to make it. Exactly. And refers to that. And it's like, if you can't make a beautiful sound with the piano, why are you playing the piano? Just, it's not worth it. Who wants to listen to you bang away or play stupidly on the keyboard when it has to sing like a human being?
Yeah.
And at some point in the 20th century, that approach changed, one might say. I don't want to put necessarily a negative connotation on it, but the Lotus, in that sense, is a product of the old school of play.
Oh, absolutely.
That every line is interesting and structured in a way that sings.
Yeah.
Even the ridiculous virtuosic stuff, it's done with a sense of phrased structure or trajectory that doesn't allow it to become vertical and violent.
Yeah.
You know, which can happen sometimes.
Oh yeah. And it's not just loud and fast.
No,
it's not just loud and fast. There's something he's very much connected and very committed to the lines.
And it's very easy to hear the ideas.
Oh yeah.
There's a really great mind in that pianist. So he's laying things out in a way that no matter how many notes there ends up being or what the hell's going on, you still hear the overall, you can see hear the overall picture of what's happening.
Absolutely.
It's a fabulous recording. One of the amazing debut recording. And interestingly, a real clever debut recording.
Oh yeah.
Because transcriptions and things are coming back into
absolutely
taste and favor in a way. But back when he did this recording, I was interested in transcriptions at the time, and at least in academia and stuff. Howard let me play some things.
Yeah. Because
he got it. You know, he's from Russian school and from Juilliard and all that. But he said, but I wouldn't do too much of this stuff, especially in front of an academic audience, because they like to hear the meat and potato stuff.
Yeah.
And for a long time, it was meat and potato stuff. But this kind of music, everybody expected that at the end of the concert. At least.
Oh, yeah.
That's the reason that you put up with concerts. Was for the bonbons at the end, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, more on that, maybe another episode. But, yeah, this is quite a CD. You know, I have another copy at home. You can have this one.
No.
I have another copy.
Really?
I do, serious. Besides that, you already have the disc.
Oh, I never took it out of the machine? Oh, damn, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
I forgot to put it back. It's in the machine.
Okay, but you can have it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Sure thing, but
thank you. Well, that's really nice. I'll get that out occasionally and listen to it.
Okay. All right, well, can I show you what we brought in today?
Yeah.
Oh, we got so many stuff to talk about today.
I've got a few things here. But
oh, you do?
yeah,
Okay, well.
We didn't talk about that stuff last time, did we?
Which one?
The things that I had there. I don't think I ever
the science.
Time to introduce it.
Well, is that the one with the Beethoven concertos with Brendel?
No, that goes back a ways.
Okay, what is this one?
Sibelius.
Oh, it's Sibelius. No, we didn't talk about that one.
In our,
Oh, I brought in my copy from the. Oh. No. Well, it's funny you should bring that. Because we didn't get to talk about my find over at my last final find over at the library. You want to see it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, last time you were here, we talked about my adventures as Indiana Elmer at the book sale at the library.
Ooh.
And I found this.
Wow.
This is amazing. Some of you may be familiar with the writer-author Alan Walker. He was famous back in the 80s and the 90s for releasing 3 volumes of about the life and times of Franz Liszt.
Yeah, cut his life up into 3 periods.
Yeah.
He's British.
Yeah.
He's written other things too, but
Oh yeah, plenty of other things.
it's some really fascinating reads, and I think he's become so popular because he has a way of writing so that it can be appreciated very much by the academics and people, musicologists and folks like that. But it's also enjoyable reading.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a way of telling stories about the other things about the composer and so forth. That I mean, something I admire about him is we use that Prentice Hall, is it Yale?
Yeah.
Way of studying music history in terms of social context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The only one that didn't do that was Trudy Faber. She used Manfred Buchholzer's work on a book on the Baroque period.
Wow.
But otherwise, Dr. Walters in medieval Renaissance, classical period, Romantic period, we used I think it's Prentice Hall it's called, but it's the series of design at Yale to teach music and music theory in social context.
Yeah.
That's the way we learned at Wittenberg.
Well, that's great.
And I like Alan Walker's writing in that. Well, what's special about him is that his scholarship is impeccable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And he writes to satisfy musicologists, but the writing also is commercially
Oh yeah.
pleasing to the public.
Oh yeah. I mean, I found that whenever I read those books on Franz Liszt, I mean, it was a memorable experience. I mean, the story moved on, and you understood the context of everything.
And it was nice to see a British guy writing. I mean, clearly he really admires Liszt.
Oh yeah.
Everything about he loves the guy that he's writing about.
Yeah.
Compared to the famous 1930s article that appeared in Groves.
Yes.
It's a Hungarian charlatan and contributed nothing.
Well, let me show you this. It might be hard to see, but
I didn't know he even did this book.
neither did I until I found it, and I gasped when I saw it. But here it is. It's Alan Walker's book on Frédéric Chopin. It's hard to see, but there's a print of as a Chopin medallion, I guess. It's hard to see, but it's sort of embedded.
So when
in
this
there.
stuff shows up, you said that sometimes it's been given to them by
It was
private
donated.
library.
Yep.
But why don't they keep it?
I don't know.
I mean, you'd think that a book like this would be.
I know.
There's no inscriptions or anything.
Nope. It's hardly even been cracked open.
This is really cool.
It's a beautiful cover.
I've never seen such. I've got some books on Chopin, various things.
Yeah.
One really good and interestingly is a collection of his letters.
Oh yeah.
But I've never seen such a massive biography of Chopin. And he does this kind of thing, he does it by years. 33 to 35, 35 to 38, 34 to 37.
Yeah.
Wow. On pictures and everything. That's amazing. How much did you pay for it?
couple dollars.
Oh my God, buddy!
Yeah, I know. It was
Oh
a
my
book
God.
sale. I only had to, and I bought it for $2, folks.
Wow.
I'm ashamed, but yeah, there it is, $2.
I'm not.
So
You rescued stuff.
I know. I tried my best. So, anyways, I also want to, let's see, show you what we have here. I've been digging through the archives again, and I talked about this before.
Uh-huh.
Remember that transcription of the Rite of Spring done by the American composer Sam Rathling?
Yeah.
And it was recorded by one pianist, Dikran Atamian. And I found it.
him. Yeah.
It's an amazing
It's,
recording.
Armenian pianist.
Yes, he is.
Hmm.
He was up in Cleveland Institute for a while. I don't
That's
know if he still
right.
teaches there.
That's right. Wow.
But it's an amazing recording. I was introduced to the vinyl recording back in 1983, 84 by the chairman of the music department back in Ohio West. I'll never forget it.
99.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, but here, let me show the folks. So if you pianists out there want to find the recording or learn a transcription of Rite of Spring, you rarely get it done better than Sam Rathling. There's another one done by Vladimir Leyechkis as well, which is done very well. And here I had to dig deep in the barrels. These are 3-volume recordings of somebody we talked about quite often, Joseph Hoffman.
Oh, yeah. Oh, are these some of the Marston things?
Nope, they are not Marston.
They're not.
I think they're IPA, International Piano Archives. But the pianism remains very consistent. It is Joseph Hoffman. Now, on YouTube, you can find complete recitals that never was released on record. I was recently listening to a recital he had given at some place what looks like a castle. And on that recording, he had I think he had some Schumann on that recording, which was quite impeccable. This one I think even has the Golden Jubilee concert.
Yeah, it does.
But, yeah, it was quite a. Yeah, this was quite a traversal. It took me 3 days to get through all of this.
Some of these recordings now, there's been like at least 8 volumes, I think, released by Marston Records of Joseph Hoffman's complete recordings. They've been going back and redoing things, so I think they're repeats of this information, but
Probably.
they clean them up so incredibly well. But this is pretty amazing. Have that much Hoffman? I don't have that much Hoffman. I have a few things here and there.
Yeah.
But I don't have a lot of his stuff.
Well, I was happy to have found these. Like I said, I'm still organizing the archives, and I just found these.
Wow.
Now, I think it was in our last episode that I wanted to premiere a whole new segment in our programming here. So,
okay, now if you do this,
yeah,
let's tell them what it is, but then let's not talk for like 5 seconds, so that I can play the special music for it to sound. But go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
The new segment is called All Pieces Considered. Okay, so with this segment. Welcome to All Pieces Considered. So, the purpose of this part of this segment is to introduce pieces. Pieces rarely heard of, or maybe you've heard of the piece, done by composers you may or may not have heard of. Okay, so the first one on the list.
We're talking about sometimes scratching those pimples on the underside of the iceberg.
Yeah. So, so the first piece I want to introduce to you is a work by Lucas Foss. Lucas Foss, and I guess years ago he had composed a work back in 1988 for the 70th. No, wait, was it? Let me see. Well, here, I'll read it to you, okay? This piece is called For Lenny.
Oh.
Can you guess who it's for?
Yeah, Bernstein.
Yeah, it's Leonard Bernstein.
Yeah.
So, For Lenny was composed at the request of the Boston Symphony Orchestra for Tanglewood's celebration of Leonard Bernstein's 70th birthday. Composing a piece based on Bernstein's New York, New York was fun, and I enjoyed doing it. I played it myself in the original version for piano and orchestra at Tanglewood in 1988. Signed Lucas Foss. So here it is. Variation in New York, New York. Now, if you're not familiar where the song comes from, some of you may know where it's from. It's from his show On the Town. The film version actually starred Frank Sinatra, Gene Kelly, and I don't remember the third guy. I don't know if you've ever seen it. On the Town. You could be right. It could be Fred Astaire, because there's some wild dance numbers in that thing. But it also has actresses Vivian Lee, or not Vivian Vance.
Vivian Vance?
Vivian Vance. You know,
Really? Yeah.
Does anybody know who Vivian Vance is? Yes, Ethel Mertz was in the movie, and she was a young thing in this movie. And she did it all. She sang and danced, and like I said, there was some pretty wild, difficult numbers in this show. Even this dancing made you go like this. Very comparable to West Side Story.
The thing most recently I associate with Lucas Foss.
Yes.
He's a great composer. He himself must have been up in years by this time, because he goes back decades into the 30s and 40s. But it was his wife who had on again, off again affairs with Glenn Gould. There's apparently a story where she takes the kids and she's going to go off and live with Glenn Gould, presumably permanently.
Right.
I guess they've been out in Fleming or whatever. She announces it, and Lucas Foss is such a mensch in this. He says, "I'll see you when you get back." That's it.
And that was it?
That was it.
Wow.
And it did last for a while, but then she did go back to Lucas.
She did go back to Lucas?
Because
wow.
It turns out Glenn Gould was, as one might imagine, a bit difficult to live with.
Oh, gosh. So,
that's
anyway,
an interesting piece.
Yes, it is a very interesting
Where do you
piece.
find this stuff?
They just seem to fall in my lap. This one did. I mean, this one is no different from the other pieces. I just go to I visit thrift stores, I visit book sales, and they just happen to be there. Now, incidentally, if you notice, I said here that the original version of this work is for piano and orchestra. And it is definitely extended. This piece pretty much is when I first heard it, it almost sounded like a little bit of noodling here and there. I was very just comfortable. There's few little episodes in the work where you hear this, where it sounds sort of capricious and playful. Other times, it's just sitting there, almost like just walking, almost like you want to walk through New York and just see the sights, and that's it. And just, just a comfortable walk, saunter through the park. But now, if you listen to the original version for piano and orchestra, then you get the real swing of how it is, of the exciting nightlife in New York. You get all of that at the original version. And it is very exciting to listen to. You get to hear, heavier drum and percussion in it, and the basses, boom, 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 walking thing. So it is quite, it's actually a very exciting work to listen to in its original form. Otherwise, for me, it's a wonderful tribute. It would make a wonderful encore, to tell you the truth. It would make a wonderful encore. And several pianists have done it on YouTube. So, now, about Lucas Foss. I don't know if he's still alive. Perhaps, no, he's probably not alive. Let's see. It says here, he was born in 1922, and he's in Germany. When this information came out, he was still alive. So at this point, if he was alive, he'd be 102 years old.
I don't think he is. I'll look it
I don't
up.
think he is either. But anyways, other works by him on piano, he had composed and published 4 two-part inventions, 2 piano concerti, a fantasy rondo, and probably one of his most ambitious solo piano work is a piece called Grotesque Dance. So, but there was an interview given of Leonard Bernstein, and in the interview as well was Lucas Foss. So, anyways, they both attended Curtis Institute of Music, probably the best here in the States.
He died in 2009.
2009? Okay. So,
Born in Berlin in 22.
Yeah. 1922, 2009. Okay, so otherwise, let's see, they became best friends at Curtis. They were just kids. Lucas Foss was very impressed with Leonard Bernstein. He says he seemed to know more than the teachers for some reason. And so that kind of attracted him because, they, like I said, they sort of hung out. They were best friends. Leonard Bernstein talks about his experiences there. He wanted to study with Rudolf Serkin, and he didn't make the roster. So the two of them had the same piano teacher. It was some Russian lady, I don't even recall her name, but she was a real stickler. And
Vigorova.
What was it?
Vigorova. Isabel Vigorova. Yeah.
Wow. So, but they said she was really tough on them. But anyways, that is Lucas Foss. Now, so much for Lenny. I thought I'd bring this piece in since they just released his movie, Maestro. And, did you ever get to see it yet? Or
I didn't see it.
You didn't get to see it yet? So, is it out yet? I mean, is it still
yeah.
in the theaters?
I don't know if it still is. At the end of last year, I thought it was out. I doubt that it's still out.
So, okay.
We'll have to look
might have to look it up on DVD or something. Now, the other work in question, as we continue on All Pieces Considered, is a programmatic work. It's a piano concerto, a programmatic piano concerto of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? For piano and orchestra by one, you may have heard of this guy, by Howard Cashel. Never heard of him? Okay, let me bring this up to the viewers so you can all see this. Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So, anyways, it's a neat cover. I mean, it's got sort of this ink drawing of Ichabod Crane being chased by the Headless Horseman. Now, what I know of Howard Cashel, he's mostly involved with the piano education part of the piano world. He has a what he calls the piano course, and it was printed and released in I think 2 or 3 volumes, and it's a piano method. Lots of pieces in them. I remember I think volume 1 alone has nearly 50 pieces in it, 50 works. So it's quite sizable. Now, the unique thing about this work is this copy actually comes with 2 copies for 2 pianos. So now, basically, I sort of look at this work. I've played through it. I've played all the themes. I played both parts just this past week. And it's very Hungarian. And I would say it almost sounds like a watered down Dochnani quality to it. I can't shake off sort of the feel that it almost feels like Hungarian music. It almost comes off as sort of a pianist's concerto in training, mostly because it uses very limited sources, but in a way, it's to help train for the bigger stuff. The arpeggios is very basic, but it fits the hand well. It's almost as if you could imagine yourself that Dochnani had composed a watered down concerto for Hollywood, or even Disney. I mean, even some of the harmony and even the melodies, the themes, has sort of a trite quality, or almost seems more contrived. And it almost sounds like it was the fashionable type of approach to composition back during I want to say the 30s or the 40s, almost Disney-like. So it's not terribly difficult. There's some tricky spots in it, and with sufficient practice, you could easily get it done. It's easier than the Shostakovich Piano Concerto No. 2.
I'm not sure when this was actually composed, but it was printed in 1964. It's in 3 movements, and purports to tell kind of the story and characters of Sleepy Hollow. I would say it's, depending on your perspective, advanced intermediate to advanced, but at student level, kind of a thing,
Yeah. Now,
it's not bad. The
No.
language looks interesting. It could be probably fun to play.
Yeah.
Be an interesting thing to give if they wanted to spend their time on it, like a high school a good pianist. Have them play it. Maybe they could learn it and play it with their high school orchestra, for example.
Yeah. If the parts are still available.
Yeah.
Now, some of you might have heard of his father. His father was a musician as well. His father is Frank Kaschau, and he gave him his first piano lessons. So apparently, Howard at least was proficient enough at the piano that he made his orchestral debut playing Rachmaninoff's Paganini Rhapsody up in New York. So he was at least able to do that. So he was at least accomplished. And that is the only time I've heard of any information about him performing. It was just that one time he played Paganini Rhapsody. That was it. So you've got here 3 movements. The first movement called Idyll. Idyll.
It's usually
fairly,
a story about being in nature in the woods.
Yeah. The second movement is called Of Ichabod, Katrina, and Brom Bones. The third movement is called The Chase, which is where all the, it's Mark Presto, it's in 6/8. Lots of chromaticism. But you know what? I also noticed about the structure of the thing. It has a minute commonality with Gershwin's Concerto in F, because it has that recurring theme at the beginning. It comes off lyrical, and then it comes off grandiose in the finale.
Oh, I didn't know
The theme at the beginning of the Gershwin Concerto, where he goes up, and it comes off grandiose when it presents itself with full orchestra again. So
This reminds me too of the beginning of the G major concerto for Ravel,
yeah,
because it's just these water-like arpeggio things repeated.
yeah.
Not actually just broken chords, really. Not really arpeggio. Changing, shifting harmonies and stuff in the first movement. It uses chromaticism a lot in the third movement for the chase.
Yeah. So, but there you go. Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Howard Cashel. Can't find a recording of this, by the way. Can't find a recording of it. I've looked on Spotify, iTunes. It's not even on YouTube.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, so I brought in a new composer today.
Oh, okay.
I brought in a new composer today, and it may surprise some of you. It definitely surprised me a little bit, when I first encountered this composer years ago. It would have been in the 90s, and back then I just thought, that was it. You know, I heard a couple pieces by him. Okay, big deal. You know, that was it. I didn't know anything about him, but now 4 or 5 years ago, this is almost like 20 years later after I first heard about him. Now, let's go back again. I'm sorry, but I heard his pieces for piano back in 1988. So if you fast forward 20 years later, I was at the local music store downtown, Stanton's Music, and they were having a sale. It was a 50 to 75% off sale, and they had the complete works of this guy. And lo and behold, I was surprised that he was actually fairly prolific at the piano.
Wow.
So, who is this mysterious composer? Well, I'll give you a few clues. He's probably the first most popular. He was the first one to receive world renown as a Czech composer. You might think it was Dvorak, but there was actually somebody before him.
Dushek?
I'm sorry?
Is it Dushek?
No, it is not Dushek.
Bolshevik?
This is Bedřich Smetana.
Oh, Smetana.
Smetana.
Oh,
Look at this.
Gosh.
Look at this. Now let me show the folks here. Look how much piano work this is. This is Bedřich Smetana. Who would think that he would break this many piano solos? But he did. So it's amazing. He was very prolific. Now, his dates. He was born on March 2nd, so he missed his birthday about 2 or 3 months. March 2nd, 1824, and he died May 12th, 1884. So he would have been 50.
He does precede the Dvorak.
I'm sorry?
He does precede the Dvorak.
Yeah. So, but here he is. Now, interestingly enough, what I've read about him, well, look, here you go. Bedřich Smetana. He was actually born in a family that was largely musical. Surprise, surprise. They were largely musical. Dad was a violinist. His mom was a dancer. His mother was actually his dad's third wife. So apparently he had outlived, or I don't know what the story is between his first and second wife, but Bedřich Smetana's mother was his dad's third wife. Like I said, he was born the third child in a very largely musical family. Now, it was his father who taught him how to play the violin and the piano. It was Dad. So I would imagine, if you look at his repertoire, he has lots of things like furiants, polkas, particularly polkas. I mean, lots of them. I would imagine that came from his mom's side of the family, since she was a dancer. Now, he was at least musical enough and learned the violin well enough. He actually took part in playing a Haydn string quartet at the age of 5. He at least was able to do that. But his real passion was for composing music. And even at 8 years old, he composed lots of songs and dances. Now, in one of his biographies that I read off online, he remarks about how at 17 years old, he wanted to be a composer so bad, he just wrote what he knew about music, just composed. But he said he couldn't tell you at that time the difference between a C sharp and a D flat at 17 years old. So he still had some music theory to at least learn, which or whatever as far as notes go. Now, his education, at least before he was in his teens, he was not well liked at school. He was not well liked at school, and there's several reasons, but one of them that was most common in his biography was that they didn't like the way he dressed, the kids, and so he was often bullied, and for that reason he often skipped out on school to pursue his real passion, which was music. And so instead of going to school, he would go to all these concerts that were taking place all afternoon, sometimes even in the morning. So now, finally, his father caught on to it, and he was, as you can tell, as any father or parent would be with their child if they've been skipping out of school. He was not happy and wanted to move him out of the town so that he wouldn't have to deal with having to skip out of school and going to concerts. Now, enters his cousin Joseph Smetana. Enters Joseph into his life, who decided to take the boy under his wing to attend a school in Pilsen. And at least there, he was able to, nurture his musical talent. He actually took piano lessons there. And eventually he got so proficient at piano that he was invited to play at parties, different wedding events, celebratory events. He got invited to everywhere, and he was even paid handsomely for doing these parties. Now, at this school, let's see, he graduated in 1843 at 19 years old. So, and it also says here that he actually got to meet his wife at the school, his future wife. Her name was Katrina, who was also a pianist. So, and apparently, he was very deeply in love with this woman. After graduation, 1843, he goes to Prague and attends the Prague Music Institute to study more piano, but even more importantly, composition. So at this point, he's like 19, maybe 20 years old, and he still wants to become a composer. So somewhere during his stay there at Prague, he eventually meets Hector Berlioz, and Franz Liszt. And so I guess that was a really big turning point in his life. He sought the favors from Franz Liszt to see if he would get his support concerning publishing his compositions. And he was known for this. Franz Liszt was known to donate money for special talent. He thought was very special talent. Now, from Franz Liszt, apparently he wasn't ready to just donate money to this kid, but instead he did point him to the direction of a publishing company to publish some of his works. And so he was quite thankful for that. Now, 1948. What happened in 1948? Well, it is the Prague Revolution. And so apparently The Prague Revolution motivated him to write patriotic articles for the local papers and compose nationalistic music, one of which is still, which was popular back then, probably even to today, a work called The Song of Freedom. I've never heard the work. I haven't delved in to try to find the work yet. I might soon do that. Now, he was doing all of this while he was doing all this, and at the same time still teaching piano lessons. This is in Prague. Eventually, Prague would meet defeat against Austria, at which point Smetana packed up his bags and moved to well, not Austria. Where did he move to? He moved to Sweden. Sweden.
It says a Kapellmeister or something in some place in Göteborg in one of these books.
Oh,
something like that.
Yeah, you're right. Sweden. He became the conductor of the Göteborg Symphony Orchestra. Anything else? Oh, and he marries Katrina. They will eventually have 4 daughters. So, anyways, apparently he must not have been happy being in Sweden. He said, according to sources, he found them to be rather, in the art world, rather not quite up to date as far as arts go. So, as soon as things calmed down, he packed up wife and family and moved back to Prague. Now, back to Prague. That would have been August of 1843. No, wait. Now I'm going back. No, it was 1856. So he would have been back to Prague. The sad part about it is it wasn't long after they moved back to Prague that three of his daughters passed away from tuberculosis and or scarlet fever. And they were barely even 6 years old. So only one daughter survived. That was Sophia. His wife eventually contracted tuberculosis, and she died in 1859.
What a sad life.
Yes, so it was just he and his daughter. Musically, he was still performing. He was hired on to become the court pianist at the Prague Castle. Let's see. His wife died in 1859. He eventually remarried a year later to a Barbara Ferdinand. So they remarried, and apparently he had 2 boys with her. Not much information is available about the boys. Eventually, the marriage between Bedrick and Barbara, it sort of fell on the sour side, and he even talks about it later in his life as they just couldn't stand being in the room with each other, and he actually uses the word she hated it. So for some reason she actually hated him. No given accounts as to what happened to their marriage. Now, on a brighter note, as far as composing goes, coming back to Prague, they opened up an opera house. And so he decided to start composing opera. And I've never heard of this opera that he composed. It's called The Brandenburgers in Bohemia. Have you heard of that one? Neither have I. But apparently it was a success. It met with great success. So it even went to the point to winning a competition in 1867. So after winning the competition, he decides to compose another opera. And we all know it, The Bartered Bride. The Bartered Bride. Now, strangely enough, it's a very popular work. Lots of orchestras perform the polka from The Bartered Bride. The Bartered Bride is an opera actually failed at its premiere. So now at this point, I don't know what happened, but he was not looked on with favor among music critics. He really wasn't. I don't know why, but he was getting shafted left and right by all these critics, and even by some colleagues. That was weird. Not much is known about why this happened. Now, he did start to go deaf. He did start to go deaf, which may explain his rather, I don't know, Beethoven-like demeanor, basically. He was ill-tempered. He had a very short fuse, which may explain as well why his marriage was starting to fall apart as well. Now, The Bartered Bride eventually received a second chance at life in 1870, and this time it did meet with success. So, the librettist is his old buddy Carl Sabina, who he met, I guess, apparently when he was back at the Prague Institute. Now, with his growing deafness, he eventually he couldn't teach anymore. He just couldn't. He said he was hearing nothing but noises in his head, and he couldn't teach piano lessons anymore. So he decided to move someplace else. I don't know where it is, but he moved in with his daughter, his eldest daughter. Well, his only daughter, actually. And he decided to live out the rest of his life in a nice, peaceful, quiet home, where in 1876, he finally completes the final movement of Ma Vlast, My Fatherland. After that...
That's the only thing that I really know orchestrally. And isn't for the bar... That is his?
That is a
Dvorak
Slavonic dance.
You're right, that's a Slavonic dance.
Yeah.
So I can't think of the Bartered Bride right now.
Yeah, but the polka is supposed to be popular. Lots of orchestras play it. So, but anyways, he eventually passes away. He dies quietly at home on May 12th, 1884. And that is what we know about Bedřich Smetana.
Wow.
Now, there was a nice lady from Czechoslovakia on YouTube who did a series of concerts of only his music. It took up maybe 6 or 7 recitals to do it all.
Wow.
But she did it. She was a real trooper. She played all of it, except for this one.
Macbeth.
The Macbeth. This is probably the largest scale solo work he's ever written. Now, for all you Lisztians out there is a work called On the Seashore, which is basically his probably his most ambitious piano work. It's a concert etude. I think it's about somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes, and that sucker is a bear.
Have you ever played any of these pieces?
Well, I've dabbled with it. I've dabbled ever since I heard Percusiony come out with his album of some of the Czech dances and the polkas. And these things are not easy. They are not easy.
He has a kind of an interesting style with the piano. I mean, it shows up a lot. There are, I don't know how to explain them, but a lot of arpeggiated chords repeated a little bit. It's really like the first movement of that concerto you were showing, but
Yeah.
he uses that kind of configuration often in his works. Honestly, looking at it, it's not easy to scan harmonically. I mean, I don't really know him that well, but I mean, I can't really quite. I can see a development in his tonal language, but well, I don't have that much intelligence. But say just observations. I would say it's not simple.
No, it's not as far from it.
But there is a certain kind of a style in the writing. It looks like more common in his earlier work, which betrays kind of a personal way that he probably liked to play the piano or do things. So swoosh, 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 swoosh kind of stuff like this with things happening in it. If anything, it's interesting to me because it looks like he was born in 1824, right?
Yeah.
Halfway into Chopin's life. Even from the beginning in what they call the early works.
Yeah.
I don't see the same kind of, this is not a judgmental thing.
Yeah.
But I would say, for all its novelty and the beautiful things that Chopin did, there is really good classical structure in his compositions. You know that you can read it.
Yeah.
I mean, away from the piano, you can follow it and all that. This is only 1824. Is what 15 years. Chopin was 15 years old.
Yeah. Now you have to.
I'm not sure exactly. Well, I mean, when you think about post-Mozart people, there's Hummel, Czerny would have been writing a bunch of stuff post-Beethoven.
Yeah.
And the Chopin, and there's some early Liszt. I know what I think.
Yeah.
I think his early piano writing, and I think, well, the other thing I'd say, I noticed that when he has these, if he had big hands, good for him, but he has these big ostinato kind of stretching a 12th or a 10th at least in the left hand at times with the upper voice in there. I don't think he was a naturally inclined fabulous pianist. Because I think from early on he's writing for a lot, obviously, there for the piano. Yeah. But it looks to me more like a reduction from an orchestral concept. That's what I see a lot of the time there. And I mean, Beethoven does that early on, right? In the Opus 3 piano sonatas. Yeah. I mean, when he's writing those minuets in the first sonatas, they're clearly in his head, and we learned this in school, that he's got string quartets in his brain.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, especially the way he writes those.
Oh yeah.
And it's not so unusual because Leopold Mozart's book on how to play the violin was kind of, for some time, even into the 20th century, was looked at as a means of trying to figure out how they probably played the early forte piano. Yeah. That was the rule about articulation and things like that. And they probably mimicked all that. And some of Beethoven's most ambitious, really stretching out there, writing was actually, I mean, the 5 cello sonatas, piano cello, from the very beginning, you can see, but by the time you get to the third one, which is A minor, A major, I forget, and then the 5th and the 6th ones, it's a vast compositional development. But he really goes places. And then, of course, everybody would say the real experimentation in harmony, tonality, I mean, where he's beginning to really break down the barriers, is in the string quartets.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find things in the later piano sonatas and violin sonatas. I think, I mean, there's the big one. What's the big one called? Kreutzer.
Yeah.
I find them a little bit more refined and a little more conservative compared to the last, for example, the last two cello sonatas. Those kind of get out there. That monster fugue in the last movement of the fifth one, D major.
Yeah.
But Beethoven, many times, people would say Beethoven is writing often with strings in his mind. He has that string quartet ensemble and the way the voices play with each other. It's a kind of a guiding thing. And then Mozart is writing for the stage. Mozart is always a dramatic composer, and in a way, if you hear his sonatas orchestrally, as though they're even written for an opera orchestra, I think it makes it more interesting than just purely as. And I'd say the same thing with the piano concerti as well. If you think of them more as stage works, dramatically written, and use a bit more imagination than just little Chinese dolls tinkle 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 kind of bullshit. But it's interesting you say he met Berlioz.
Yeah.
How long were they together? How much time did they spend?
Probably not a whole lot. I mean, a single event brought them together.
Because when I first started to look at the writing.
Now, in his defense, he did say he did not understand the difference between the C sharp and a D flat in his teenage years, and so you wouldn't expect him to understand theory and harmony till probably in his mid-20s.
I think in his case, I mean, like with Berlioz too. I had remarked about this in the show in the past. The oddest reductions of the songs of Berlioz for piano and voice.
Yeah.
The oddest reductions I've ever played are the ones by Berlioz. Because they're clearly not, they were not even conceived for the piano.
Right.
And they, in my mind, they don't work that well. I mean, if you want to hear some Berlioz songs, I have people enjoy them. Where you can't do them with the orchestra, because oftentimes his orchestrations are pretty sizable.
Oh yeah.
Only way you're going to hear them is with the piano reductions. Compared, for example, to Mahler, where his stuff, I'm not sure if it. I think they may have started out with piano, but then he orchestrated them.
Yeah.
You do Kindertotenlieder with the orchestra, and it's magnificent. The effects, especially with the lightning and great stuff. But you can really bring them off very effectively with the piano. Mahler. This guy, when I start to look at his earlier writing, I'm thinking he's thinking like an orchestral composer.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing color-wise that he's doing. Because when you think about Liszt's music written similarly at that time, like even up to 1840, something. I mean, the ballad is 1862, I think.
Yeah.
The one I played, it's like a ballad. You can scan harmonic structure and stuff very clearly, and melody and accompaniment and the way things are set off, and especially with the ballad, I would play that like it's a reduced orchestral score.
Absolutely.
To get more effect from it, but. This looks like the stuff started out as an orchestral score, and somehow they
brought it down,
broke it down, for piano.
Yeah,
which is going to create some challenges to play it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then I saw some awkwardness the way that some things are written. Either he had a big Weber-like hand, or Rachmaninoff, or I thought this guy's writing for the piano, and he's not a truly great pianist, because this stuff's a little awkward in a lot of places.
Yeah.
He writes sixths in a way, let's put it this way, it might be easier in a different key than it is in that one. because sixths for me are easier to play and with a lot of black notes.
Yeah.
B major, for example, or D flat major.
Yeah.
But when you get into like 3 sharps, you know,
yeah.
even 3 flats, you like you're walking through raspberry bushes. You got to be careful you don't get caught or stuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. But when the hand is often up a lot in the high black notes, they're easier to play. And in some cases, I thought that would be a little awkward to play.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my take on it. I honestly, I don't know the guy very well at all.
Well, I didn't know him that well either.
I don't. I mean, I know that we knew about him.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of the national schools, but he actually is. To be honest, I mean, he comes off. You know, he's revered by the Czechs. I know that.
Yeah.
And I think with good cause. But he actually is almost a little older than the old national school thing, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because Dvorak was born in the 40s, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Brahms was born in 1833.
33. Yeah.
This guy was 24.
24.
So it's almost a decade earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of Brahms kind of.
And he
I
didn't
mean,
live
Brahms
long.
is a classicist, really.
Yeah.
I mean, he's romantic, but very classical in terms of control
tightly
over the materials and the structure and everything.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't really think of Brahms as a nationalist composer,
No.
per se. But you do start to get Tchaikovsky and Dvorak and these various people in the later 19th century, but he was already dead by then.
Oh, yeah.
So
what do you think of these?
that's very interesting.
2 pianos, 8 hands.
Yeah, and actually I would think conceiving it and the way that it's written,
Yeah.
I wonder when he wrote them. I think the C major rondo is an early work.
Okay.
But the sonata in one movement,
Yeah.
that would be a pretty cool piece, it looks like to me.
Well, it was
There's
so
some neat
cool.
stuff going on.
It was so cool that Martha Argerich actually has a recording.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
There's a Vermeer
It
Festival.
was a Vermeer Festival. Yeah, she got
All
together.
those guys that she pulls together.
Yeah, all the guys. So she got, actually there was, let's see, there was one adult male in the thing, and the other 2 kids were twins. They were brothers. And they're about teenage, maybe early 20s.
Oh, so she had students play.
She had one with her, and then the other one was with the other guy. And so they actually played this work. I don't know if the rondo was included with that performance, but you can see it on YouTube.
Okay.
So it's on YouTube. It's at the festival.
So it looks like it's an interesting work.
Yeah, so now
You know the reason I say it's not a pianist per se?
Yeah.
Because when you start this out, when you look at the part that's in there,
Yeah.
piano 1 is actually accompanimental, not the primary thematic material. It's
Yeah.
yada-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, there's the arpeggiated minor chord, yada-da-da-da-da-da. And he's doing this in his earlier piano writing, as far as I can tell by looking at it.
Yeah.
He uses motivic material that one would not think of as classically melody with harmony,
right?
But more a dramatic effect that you would anticipate coming more from an orchestra, because timbrely and things that would make it more interesting when you looked at what those things were written for. Actually, at the beginning, at least, of the symphony, I didn't look intensely through the whole thing, but harmonically, it's not a big stretch. It's not a big thing. Which also makes me think, I can imagine woodwinds playing that in the orchestra.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
I mean, I hear almost like an orchestration that's more comparable to Mont Blas.
Yeah.
You could hear a lot of that in this.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, you still had to pay a little bit for all that, right? It said 50 to 70.
Oh yeah, it was 50 to 70%.
Those are Baron Rider scores, people.
Yeah.
Show them what that looks like.
Let me show you what this looks
Baron Rider. I have Baron Rider stuff.
like. Yeah, this
Much
stuff
of my
didn't come
Schubert
cheap.
that I bought more recently was Baron Rider.
This is Barenreiter, guys.
Barenreiter poses itself as like the ultimate high-class Porsche version of Urtext music editions.
Yes.
I mean, I think that Vina Urtext is still very reputable. And Henley actually often has presented itself as such, but Barenreiter kind of climbed in front and started, they're well made, and the bindings are good. The cover is a little slick, almost like sealskin or something, or moleskin, but it's paper.
Yeah, I mean,
it's heavy.
Yeah.
And then they have a acid-free paper, and the way they're sewn, and the bindings, I mean, even for the paper stuff, the paperback ones, they're really well made. But put some bucks out for them. I have a whole bunch of Schubert that I bought for a while. I haven't needed to buy music scores for some time because I have a heck of a library as it is. But I have a number of those Barenreiter scores of it. But especially the Eastern Europeans, because on the list, Barenreiter started to release a list. I think we got a few books of his. One has both of the ballads in it and Smith. Oh, I know. One of the Barenreiter scores I have is the complete Amit de Pelerinage.
You got that on Barenreiter?
I've got it. I think it's Barenreiter, yeah. And then it also has all the, what was it originally? Tales of a Wanderer or something like that, before it was Amit de Pelerinage.
Oh!
There was a different name.
Album de Voyageur.
De Voyageur.
Yeah.
It has all of those pieces in it.
It does?
Alternate versions of what became Amit de Pelerinage.
It does?
I'm thinking on.
Oh my gosh, I want to see that.
I think that's Barenreiter. Because it has that kind of, just a dark colored cover. But it purports to be, MS manuscript.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It's good to have them, but it raised a question for me.
What?
Are you done talking about that?
Yeah, I'm done talking about Smith.
Well,
folks.
I've started to read the Levine book.
Yeah.
I'm not getting into too much yet. Okay. But one of the things they say is something interesting to me. Thinking about, they started, I think Juilliard started in the 20s, right?
Yeah.
And they were founding members of the school.
Oh, yeah.
I think, with this sudden influx after the First World War of these miraculous musicians coming to New York. I mean, let's say preceding the First World War, probably one of the great influences in New York was Edward MacDowell.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was big time.
Oh, yeah.
He was European trained and brought those kind of pianistic and compositional skills back to America, and then began to write, in a sense, American nationalist music. He wrote the C Sonata, for example, and different sonatas,
the New England Idylls,
and the New England Idylls, and all these. The most famous thing is To the Wild Rose or something.
To the Wild Rose. It almost got lost. That work almost got lost. If you don't know this story, his wife was often cleaning up his work room. Right? No, she didn't throw it. He did. Edward MacDowell.
Well, let's put it this way: it isn't honestly one of his best pieces, but it's certainly the most famous.
It probably
it's like
is.
Beethoven's For Elise.
For Elise,
everybody knows that
one. But Edward MacDowell made it a practice to practice composing. And so he practiced it every day diligently. He'd be composing something every day. And oftentimes it didn't turn out the way he wanted it. And so he just tossed it in a basket. And his wife was cleaning up his office, and she was looking through the wastepaper basket and saw this Wild Rose. And she looked at it and was like, this work is beautiful. Why do you want to throw that? And she asked him, why did you want to throw this out?
I think this is good. I think you should. A possible composer or educational period topic would be late 19th century American composers, especially maybe looking at MacDowell as one of the anchors in that period.
Absolutely. Even before that.
There's some interesting folk, but let's think about that. That could be an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Because there's a really good Dover book of 19th century American piano music, or is it just American music? It even goes back to Dudley, what's his name's, the 18th century Kentucky composer who wrote the
Stephen
theme and
Foster.
Variations. No, before him.
Before him.
Yeah,
there's a William Mason.
No, that guy's a very famous pianist and composer. No, I'm talking Beethoven's time.
Beethoven's time? That far back?
It goes back there. Yeah, there's like theme and variations that are kind of like probably influenced by Reinecke or
Reinagel? Alexander Reinagel? Yeah.
Reinagel, for example. Some stuff like that. And then, of course, probably our first famous pianist composer was Louis Moreau Gottschalk from New Orleans.
Absolutely.
Who went over to Chopin's Paris and astonished people.
Yeah.
And played the banjo and all these things. And people thought he was wonderful.
Yeah. Chopin declared him the king of pianists.
Yeah.
That's a story, okay?
Yeah.
We don't know if it's actually accurate, but supposedly Chopin came over, gave him a big hug, and called him the king of pianists.
Some interesting things that happened. You know, we got kind of backed up, so to speak, with the Civil War.
Yeah.
That kind of put America on hold for a while. Not just the 4 years of the war, but probably for at least a decade afterwards to clean up and restructure and that. But in a sense, what happened is capitalism went wild. It was a period of extraordinary growth and financial development. There was infamously a depression in 72, 73, or 78, maybe both of those periods, which were created by the banks in order to steal property from people that had taken it out on loans, and they ended up getting it back. But there were some famous people, like pianist-wise and composer-wise, along the lines of the whole list in Hinseld School, Mississippi Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Composer-wise, and very interestingly, and way out there, and in ways the things that he did anticipated what Schoenberg did a quarter of a century later. Charles Ives up in New England. Yeah. That boy was out in another galaxy of his own. Writing, so he was an incredible organist, like César Franck. Mm-hmm. That was his primary instrument, and then wrote these great works. I think in some ways probably because of an organist's mind. Could be. He's bringing, like layering things on top of each other, the way an organist can with all those keyboards and the pedals and everything. But I think one of the foremost musical people, we're kind of talking about it now, but we can go into more detail. Sure. Was MacDowell, and we could talk about how he got his training, what he did with it, his German training, all that. Yeah. And then he held quite a bit of sway. I actually talked to, some years ago, I had written something about MacDowell and played some stuff and got the attention of a descendant of his in New York State. Really? Who contacted me. I think this was probably when I was in Wisconsin. I don't know where that was leading or what it went to, but I do remember talking to them on the phone. They called me up. I think what it was, I sent them some stuff that I'd found in the libraries in Wisconsin and sent it to them in New York, that they were working on something. But this, I don't know if it was even a man or a woman, but they were a descendant of MacDowell, and they were working on a book about it. Yeah. You know. I mean, really scholarly, not just a... Oh, yeah. Anyway, then there was World War I, which just really shook the hell out of the planet. It was a bad time. There was 50 million dead. Or was that something like that? Something like that. Yeah. But part of that number also was the Spanish flu. I mean, when you think about all the dead bodies and the rot and all that stuff, lack of cleanliness and everything. But then there was the Spanish flu. And it's possible between 50 and 100 million people died. That's a lot back at the beginning of the 20th century. And it really shook, I mean, it crumbled Europe. The old 19th century aristocratic, noble kind of traditions mostly collapsed. Some of them lasted. I mean, England, of course, Sweden, I believe. Norway got absorbed into Sweden for a period of time. They lost their kingdom. The Dutch, rather quietly, I think, kept that thing going on. But a lot of stuff collapsed. I mean, famously, the Emperor Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany actually what do you call that? He left and went to the Netherlands and lived in exile in a mansion or estate for a long time. Nazis tried to pull him up at the early part of their existence in the 30s to use him as a figurehead. They wanted to bring him back and actually, with no power, but to bring the royal ascendancy of the German people back to life, yeah. with Wilhelm II.
Wow.
He actually refused.
He actually refused.
Yeah, he turned it down. He didn't like Hitler. He didn't like what they represented. He didn't think represented the best of the German people. It's a really good movie that was made with the British actor who plays the dad in...
was it Christopher Plummer?
Christopher Plummer.
I know that movie.
Yeah.
The something that shook the world.
Yes.
I can't remember the name of the title, but it's something that shook the world.
He played Nicolas Cage's dad in the Treasure Guys. Nicolas Cage's movie.
Oh, National Treasure.
That was Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
Christopher Plummer's a great actor.
Oh, he's wonderful.
But
I think he's the funniest.
He was the guy that played Wilhelm II, right?
Yep, he was.
And that was a very interesting film. Yeah. They couldn't convince him to do it. Yeah. But anyway, the world was really shaken up, and there were a lot of people coming and going and moving this and that. Oh, yeah. And if you can imagine, well, I think also because, now Levine was a Jew, I presume perhaps his wife was as well. And he might have left for other reasons, although actually in the early Soviet Union, especially with the Trotsky period in the 1920s, I think it was very friendly to its citizens, including the Jews. Trotsky was a Jew, wasn't he?
I don't know.
But, infamously, Trotsky became friends with the people like Frida Kahlo and her husband down in Mexico City, and he was murdered down there. So a guy came and got him with an axe. That's when all those white Russians moved from Mexico City, up into the Rocky Mountains. Yeah. And that was how... It was this wonderful restaurant, the Russian Cafe.
Yeah,
Boulder. This missed all these shows. We talked about this last year sometime. Yeah. Never ever got onto the PSI channel. But when Claudio O'Rell died, my teacher, Howard Karp, was a graduate of Juilliard and a student of Rosina Lee. Yeah. He said, you should go check out this bookstore up in North Boulder, because there's a lot of books and various articles that are from Claudio O'Rell's own personal collection. I said, how the hell did it end up in Boulder? He said, because one of his daughters, or the daughter, I'm not sure, is married to an old family of white Russians, they call it, meaning not the communists, the Tsarist Russians, who live up in the hills over Boulder. Right. And she, had helped to go through her dad's stuff. And when she was done with what she had, she contacted this particular guy. He was a bit of a connoisseur. He was kind of famous. His bookstore was actually next to a gallery on that street, I forget what it's called. Yeah. It's right up there on the same street, just down the way from the Boulder News Sun, or whatever the paper was called. But I went, and I've got some things, including that Beethoven, huge Beethoven book that was put out the 200th anniversary of Beethoven's birth, 1970, and it's signed Claudio O'Rell. Plus a few other things I got from him. But anyway, we got off there.
That's all right.
The Levines, probably because of the revolution in Russia, came to New York. I think at that time, Rachmaninoff was still now in Europe. I think he went to Switzerland.
He went to Switzerland.
Originally. Yeah. Eventually he moved to Beverly Hills.
Yes,
he was kind of neighbors with Rubinstein and Heifetz and people out there, eventually. Yeah. But if you can imagine then in New York, and we were pretty, once the Spanish flu was done, we were pretty happy with ourselves. Because the Europeans had been scrapping and fighting, and this war really was a world war. There were different associations made around the globe so that the Japanese and the Ruskies were fighting each other, right? Japanese were on our side at the time. So were the Italians. They were on the west side in World War One. But it really involved things. So there was crap going on in Africa and Asia, not just in Europe. America, through Woodrow Wilson, managed to be neutral. He said, well, this is, a war between the noble and classes of Europe, and this is something they got to work out. That didn't have anything to do with us. We got pulled into it because of the Lusitania, famous ship that went down. By the way, Enrique Granados and his wife were on that
On that ship, yeah.
They both died.
Yeah.
It's a tragic story, but I'll tell it some other time.
Oh, yeah.
But that pulled us in. But America was in for about 13 months, and then the war was over because we had the industry.
Oh, yeah.
We sent over really not necessarily originally well-trained soldiers.
Yeah.
Because General Pershing, back in those days, can you imagine this? America had one general.
Yeah, I remember
General
that.
Pershing. And he's the one that came up with the hay-foot, straw-foot, hay-foot, straw-foot. Because all these country boys, America back at that time was over 75% agricultural.
Yep.
And the boys had like 6th grade, maybe 8th grade educations, and did a lot of, not even that, Dad yanked them out to work on the farm. They didn't know left, right. He said, left, 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 right, left. And they had no idea. It was a complete jumble. And it was very clever. He said, so you know what hay is? Yes, sir. Right. This is your hay side. You know what straw is? Yes, sir. This is your straw side. Hay foot, straw foot. Hay foot, straw foot. That's where that famous thing came from, because he realized to get all these country bumpkins being able to march in order and stuff, and basically start to think more carefully. He approached it from country language. He was the same guy, he when he was younger, he fought Pancho Villa in Mexico.
He did?
Yeah, he went after him. He actually got him because he went across the border from America deep into Mexico, at least 50 miles, and shot the shit out of all of them. I don't know if they captured him, but he broke the whole raid thing that had been going on in the southwestern United States. That was John Pershing. I'll shut up after this, but the point is, there were all these Joseph Hoffman, for God's sake, and Leopold Godowski, Jews, right? Yeah. For various reasons, Eastern Europe and especially Russia, not a good place to be anymore. And as often happened in the 20th century especially, but through most of America's history, and even honestly still to this day, some of our best IT people like that are from India and places like that, right? So I don't know who it was, but somebody came up with the idea of the Juilliard School, and I think that was a family name. We should look that up.
We should look it up. I tell you, Avram Chasins came up with has some great stories. Yeah, he talked about how Hoffman and Godowski and Levine would meet up at the bar across the street
from the school.
From the school, and they'd be drinking up a storm there, and there was a piano in the corner. They'd be having these debates as to how to do this. Now,
that's so cool.
Can you imagine those guys having a conversation with a beer and trying to figure out how to do certain passages and how they interpret things?
Yeah. So, well, the reason I mentioned this to begin with was because of the Baron-Writer edition.
The
idea of Urtext. He and his wife started out at the very beginning of the book saying that one of the important things is, of course, you have to focus on technical things, but that's not the be-all and end-all. That's just learning how to manipulate your instrument so that you can bring all the musical stuff to fruition. And one of the interesting things they're saying in that book, and he would have written this back in the 20s, maybe, or 30s. He died in the late 30s or something.
I think so.
Before the war, before we got involved in the war. Levine did, I think. They talk about Urtext editions. About getting the very best scholarly editions with the least amount of commentary and all that. Because we had talked a while back, I think in one of these
it was
online shows, about with the uninformed student. I think this is a topic that'd be interesting to try to have if we engage the
we
audience
could do that again.
about Urtext stuff. Well, she said, that they're looking at the music for guidelines about what to do.
Yeah.
That's all good and everything. But I was suggesting, for example, you got the Schnabel.
The Schnabel editions.
And I have Fabulo of Beethoven. I've got other Shaker and other stuff too. I think I've got Emily as well. But Fabulo, sometimes, especially the second volume, with the harder stuff, the later sonatas, his commentary, sometimes in some places, like the first 2 pages or something, there'll be this much music and this much commentary. Before it gets rolling along.
Yeah, Schnabel's exactly the same way.
And if you think about it, I mean, Fabulo is one of the giants of pianistic history.
Oh, yeah.
And it would be very insightful to see what the man has to say.
Yeah.
For example, then there's quartet editions of Schumann and Chopin's music. I think it would be very interesting to look at what they had to say.
Exactly.
Because, unfortunately, we don't have any recordings of Fabulo, but we do have recordings of quartet, and people regard some of those things as some of the best of Schumann and Chopin playing ever done by any artist. He's a little inconsistent sometimes, especially as he got older, but I think the good thing about having the scholarly edition is that this is as close as we can possibly get to what were the pure compositional musical intentions of the composer.
Exactly.
And then it's up to an intelligent and informed interpreter who hopefully also has the mechanism to be able to realize anything that's there, how to bring that stuff to life. But edited, for example, Liszt's music edited by Arthur Friedman.
Oh gosh,
or even so, when I was first studying the Chopin etudes, that was Friedman's edition. And it's interesting because George Sherman Music in New York hired all these Europeans coming over here, assuming these guys are, major league players in the classical world, and a lot of them are famous for certain kinds of historic connections. And they studied with Mikuli, who studied with Chopin, they studied with, Liszt, and all that. Be very interesting to see what they have to say about the music. Very possibly because in Friedenheim's case, he was really wedded very much to his teacher, his legend, his words, and his influence. Some said when he was younger, he even had the longer hair and did Liszt mannerisms and things. And actually, in his notes, he would often say Liszt said or Liszt played, da-da-da-da. And why would that not be fascinating?
I know. What these people had to say.
Well, we get all stick up our butt about we want to erase the chalkboard and start over on our own. That sounds to me like figuring out how to build a wheel all over again. I really hope this could lead to something, because this is a doctorate here from academia, and who professed and preached the gospel from the academic world for a long time. And I've got plenty of things, but I also at a level where I'm not bragging or anything, but I can interpret my own stuff. But I do find sometimes looking at some of these old, for example, when I was playing some of the Liszt pieces, like the Second Ballad, I'd already learned it, and, stuff. But at some point, I found that 2-volume collection of Earl Wild's edition of various famous Liszt compositions. He has some very practical and interesting ideas in his notes about the music, where he said, and come on, it's Liszt.
It's Liszt.
Liszt is one of the ultimately flexible composers.
Yeah.
I think that you can change things and add things to. And some people, they'll stick to it. No, you must play it exactly the way they started. Well, as we understand what people said about it, he never played it the way he wrote it.
Yep.
Certainly as time went on. So Wilde has some wonderful ideas about some things to do.
Fingerings
and but also some doublings or octaves or different things, or voicing things differently in the second ballad and some of the cadenza-like stuff.
Yeah.
And I incorporated some of it.
Oh, of course.
I thought, well, this is a really cool idea. So, I mean, it's like, you guys probably don't remember the Liberace Big Note Songbook.
Yeah. I remember it.
I mean, somebody thought, wow, it's like taking piano lessons with Liberace.
Yeah.
Well, this is like taking piano lessons from Schnabel or
Alfred Cortot
or Friedheim.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to expose yourself to stuff like that? And I know that it's a little. I mean, music publishing is hard in and of itself nowadays. And the truth is that they've lost the copyrights on this stuff. So if you go to IMSLP, you can print out a ton of stuff from I don't know, but I would assume. I know they still publish them, and they're a little pricey.
Yeah.
So I don't know if somebody still owns the copyright on the Schnabel editions or not. But you can get the Friedheim stuff for free off of IMSLP if you want to look for things like that. People have uploaded that stuff. But it might be interesting for certain. Whatever happened to Peter's edition? Are they still printing stuff?
They were big. They were very big.
Yeah, they had
Breitkopf and Hartel. You remember Breitkopf and Hartel?
Breitkopf and Hartel. Yeah.
Hartel?
And I remember especially Peters relied on a lot of Emil von Sauer's editing for certain things.
Yeah. I have some.
Yeah.
We both have some.
Yeah, we're from the same time, same world.
Yeah.
I have some of the Liszt pieces. If somebody were to go back and just reprint really famous pianists' editions of music that one might say they had a right to have opinions about how to do this stuff, how to play it. I don't know how much interest. Why don't you guys let us know?
Yeah, let us know.
What do you think about that whole topic? I think it's kind of cool.
I know what I was going to say. Reading all those editions of Beethoven sonatas, it gives the music more multi-dimensional qualities.
Of course it would.
It would. Multi-dimensional. Think about it, folks. Okay, which brings us to...
Oh, because we have to be quiet for 5 seconds.
All right.
Because you do.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
PSI at the movies. All right. I bring to you a very old movie. Now, do you remember the United Artists series movies that used to be on Sunday afternoons?
Yeah, kind of.
United Artists. This is the first. That was the first time.
Seemed very European.
Yes.
Right.
Very.
Although United Artists was actually
started by
the lady, famous
Mary Pickford,
Charlie Chaplin, and the heroic guy.
Buster Keaton.
No, well, may have been, but no, the guy that did all the pirate and swashbuckler kind of films with the mustache, which is a handsome guy, slept with everybody.
Oh gosh.
Errol Flynn.
Errol Flynn? He's part of it?
Yeah, Errol Flynn, Mary Pickford, and Charlie Chaplin. I don't know about Buster.
I thought Buster.
But at least those three of them were part of what was called United Artists. And they did that because at their time, you were owned by the film companies.
Yeah.
And they managed to have enough of their own fortune. They put it together and started to make their own movies.
Good idea. All right, anyways, the United Artists Movies series was on Sunday afternoons when I was a kid, and I saw this movie for the first time. It is the Eddie Duchin story.
Oh, I saw that ages ago.
Unopened.
Wow.
You remember this?
Yeah, it's
Tyrone
Power.
Yeah.
Eddie Duchin was a famous jazz pianist.
Yeah, band leader as well.
Yeah. Oh, look at it. He looks good.
Yeah.
You never even watched it. Oh, bought it for $1.
Yeah, I did.
The Ohio thrift store.
I did.
Look at you. But you probably did some research on it.
I did do some research on it.
Who's he with?
What do you mean, who was he with?
Kim Nova.
Oh, well, he was more than one woman. More than one woman.
Is that Kim Nova playing the piano?
Yeah, that probably is. But he was, she plays Eddie Duchin's first wife. He eventually gets married again later in the movie.
And it looks like he's playing a flute.
Really? A blue
Look at the piano.
That says Baldwin.
Does it say Baldwin?
It says Baldwin.
Makes more sense.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Baldwin. That's okay.
That makes more
but
sense.
But it's fancy writing.
Pianist.
Look
Yeah.
at that writing.
Very fancy. Baldwin's from before the Depression, 1920s. They made great pianos. Yes. Really fine pianos.
Some of you old timers might remember this movie.
I actually saw it on AMC years ago when the original host guy was doing the show. Bob, what's his name?
I don't know.
Yeah, the Eddie Duchin.
I was about 10 when I saw this movie.
I probably was too.
Yeah. So.
But did you see it on AMC American Movie Club?
Yeah.
Oh, you said you saw it.
I saw it on the United Artists series. It was on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh, so this is before cable, right?
Yeah, this is way before.
Because we had cable probably about the age of 14 for me, so mid-70s.
Yeah.
But I think I saw it on AMC. That's when I saw it.
Yeah, I was 10. So, anyways, yeah. Even then, I was watching old Errol Flynn movies like The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yeah.
There was also The Adventures of Don Juan, and let's see, Captain Blood.
Yeah, he and Charlie Chaplin were notorious in Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm sure they were
at the time. Errol Flynn and Mary Pickford had a thing going for a while.
Oh, well, Mary Pickford had.
She got around too.
She got around too.
Dude,
yeah.
Hollywood was different from the rest of the world. Did you ever see those? They didn't start the codes until the 30s sometime.
What do you mean codes?
Where everything's PG or G.
Oh yeah, the ratings.
The rating system.
Yeah.
It was different than that to begin with.
Yeah.
But that was a federal thing that started up.
Yeah.
In the 1930s, censorship, interesting.
Yeah.
Because there were films that were made in the 20s and before.
Oh yeah.
You can buy them too. I've seen some. I was curious about seeing them, not just because you could get a little blue or this.
Oh yeah.
But they were made before the rating system.
Yeah.
And Hollywood was doing some pretty.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, there was famously when they did like the ancient civilization stuff.
Uh-huh.
There's an original. I think it has to do with Mark Antony and Cleopatra, not the later famous.
Yeah,
ones,
not the famous,
but earlier stuff from like the
not to mention
late teens or something, and there's an orgy in one of the movies, and if I remember it right, I think some of the ladies were more than scantily clad. Or less than scantily clad. Less. I'm talking dancing things.
Okay.
And people finally got upset about that because of the middle of America being very religious.
Yeah.
There was a huge conservative religious movement in the. What was that movie that Burt Lancaster did, where he plays the guy who helps the Christian lady?
The Rainmaker.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
It's the Rainmaker.
And he plays Elmer Gantry.
Elmer Gantry?
Elmer Gantry
okay.
is the film. Which I think is Burt Lancaster plays in that. He's actually a kind of a con man and a big salesman. He can take anything and turn it into fame. And he starts to befriend and help this lady who was typical from the earlier part, even the end of the 19th into the early 20th century. She was evangelical, spiritual preacher kind of lady.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
It was a lot of ladies like that in that movement that led to Prohibition. It was mostly those kind of people that did that. And then there was a huge movement during that period of time, and then probably it began to fizzle a little bit by the time we got involved in the Second World War. But in the 30s, due to the Prohibition thing and all that, they also started to get into censorship in other areas. And they started to have censorship in films. So they really cracked down on stuff. But then there's some amazing stories about, let's put it this way, fantasy, power, and ridiculous amounts of money out there in Hollywood.
I'm sure.
The kind of tastes that would lead to, or it would enable. It was quite an interesting place to be.
Yeah, sure.
But saying this purely as an artist, and a lot of people might find this grotesque, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Yeah.
When it comes to the actual music making or artistic creation and genius,
yeah,
the personal habits of some, not all, but certain people involved with that level of genius, creativity, or interpretation.
Yeah.
They're not normal people.
Of course not.
In lots of ways.
Yeah.
I'm talking about their proclivities, their what they find enjoyable, and this and that, and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Genius and, let's put it this way, I had
genius and madness.
And madness and what one would consider not Christian and not normal.
Yeah.
Kind of
Non-mainstream.
ethical, moral behavior. There's an interesting book by a professor named Kate Jameson. She contributed hugely to the DSM-4 on mental illnesses. Mm-hmm. And she wrote a few books. I became interested in them years ago. I was studying Chinese medicine and healing and stuff in the late 90s in Arizona. I started in Japan, working with a teacher there, but particularly interested in this. I became very interested in the relationship of Chinese medicine and its application to Western, no, not application to Western, but its application as something different from a Western approach to mental illness at the time. And I had a number of experiences, was doing some things. I should have written stuff because subsequently other people have done that and got a lot of great credit for what they did. And I said, damn, I was thinking that back in those days. Well, you should have written a book. No, I didn't do it. But she wrote a really fascinating book where she looks at famous historical personages in human history who are critical in our minds historically of something contributing something really important. Yeah. So like she goes back to Alexander the Great. She also looks at Abraham Lincoln. Mm-hmm. And various kinds of political, artistic, Leonardo da Vinci, I think, is in there. Mm-hmm. Various kinds of people. And she analyzes them as a doctor and finds that they suffered from this or this or this or this. So depression, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, what do you call it, cyclothemia, certain various kinds of things. As she gleaned from what people wrote about them or what they themselves wrote about in their own writings to other people, letters or things like that, or if you're lucky to find their journals, their diaries. Her argument, and the reason she wrote this, because we were getting to a point, and I think it's going farther now, but there's definitely a period where in the later 20th century, some of the psychiatrists and people were instead of using Freudian therapies or different kinds of things to work things out, they were prescribing pills, medicine, internal medicine, magic pills, for different things. And then, of course, after a while, people had been taking them and they had reaction. Well, they didn't like necessarily the way they felt, like there was aspects of themselves that were missing.
Yeah.
What Kay Jameson was concerned about as a psychiatrist and a doctor, look at all these people in the history of humankind. And it's an amazing book. It's a who's who of people from all over the world that we think of as, in the moment, world shakers and world formers, people that really changed things. What if they'd had access to the latest SSID formula and we'd given it to them, they'd taken it? She felt that part of their genius and part of their ability to act, sometimes in sacrificial ways, or at least in more emphatic ways than a quote-unquote normal person would do, maybe they would never have done what they achieved.
Exactly.
And that with the genius and the madness, those kind of things go together, and the world may be sustained by normal people more or less, but it's not been moved and changed and everything by normal people very much.
Yeah.
And so her concern was if we start giving pills to everybody because they have a little, once in a while, what might that do to the race ultimately?
Yeah.
Because in her mind, she felt that genius and wackadoo are kind of one and the same thing. They're the same realm.
They're the combination.
I mean, a good one is like the Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman, that wonderful impersonation he does. It's a true story or something.
Yeah, it is. Or Equus. Ever seen Equus?
Yes.
Did you hear that monologue he gives at the end of the movie, Richard Burton?
I don't remember.
Oh my gosh. You remember what the story was about?
Right.
This patient, about
Yes.
the boy that,
Yes.
that.
Yep.
And anyways, he says, so what am I supposed to do with this boy? He says, am I to give him a prescription so that he winds up just like everybody else with a 9-to-5 job? He says, this boy has found something that all of us have always strived for our whole lives. He has found happiness.
Yeah.
He has found happiness. He is happy where he is at.
Right.
None of us will get to that level of happiness in our whole entire lives. We will die becoming 9-to-5 people.
Yeah.
I'm not going to destroy it.
Yeah.
And that's what he says at the end of the movie.
Well, it's interesting that we're both, Elmer and I have so much in common in some ways.
Yeah.
Where we're from, we don't have our own family histories and stuff, but both from Western Ohio and grew up at the same time. Why'd they get into this? I was talking about, because of the early movie industry and all that.
Addiction started it.
I love the Chaplin film who's the guy who played Iron Man? Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. Chaplin. Yeah.
Played Chaplin?
Yeah.
That should be a bucket list movie, I think. If you've
Beautiful.
never seen that film, and I'm not always been a fan of Robert Downey Jr.
That's got to be his best movie.
Well, yeah, and he's done other good things. I mean, he was actually good at some of that Iron Man stuff and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, as an artist, I mean, you're looking for an artistic film.
He did Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
There's some other stuff, but I think the period of time I don't like him as an actor is when he was having some serious issues with drugs and shit.
Oh yeah,
but he apparently cleaned up his act.
Yeah.
But
thanks to Mel Gibson.
Really,
believe it or not, yeah.
The Chaplin film is a wonderful. I think very fair.
Yeah.
they touch on some of the questionable moments.
Yep.
But they more or less kind of skate a little bit around those.
Yeah.
Chaplin had a thing for slightly underage girls.
Yeah.
He was a little tiny guy himself. You know,
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. He was married to one out there, too.
He was married to one.
16 years
Yep.
old or something like that.
13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember that scene.
But what they did ultimately to him, because
They got married in Mexico, by the
and
way.
the thing is if you don't know Chaplin, you must not live your life and not see some of the great Chaplin films. Gold Rush.
The Kid.
And the kid.
I
If you're a human being, you're gonna cry.
I did.
It is so touching, that film.
Yeah.
He's this little street boy, and he meets Charlie Chaplin as a street tramp.
Yeah.
And the
They're
kid,
basically
just kind of gloms onto him, and he's kind of used to being on his own and everything.
Yeah.
But then the child welfare people come and they run after the kid and take him away.
Yeah.
And by that he realizes that there's a connection there, and there's some stuff that goes on in that film.
I know exactly what you mean.
When it looks like the little boy's gone, and then it's not giving it away. Come on.
Yeah.
But when they get back together, oh my
Beautiful movie.
God! And it's all silent. There's no talking.
Talking.
Once in a while, there's a little thing,
Yeah.
But it's a silent film. Then the other one I love is Gold Rush, which is all about the whole history in Alaska.
Yeah. That was a funny movie.
Some of the humor that they eventually in the cabin, and then that they took into Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yep.
They adapted some of his stuff. Like there's a scene where he actually takes one of the guy's huge workman's shoe and boils it and cooks it.
Yeah.
And then they cut it up and they're trying to eat the leather. They're really eating it.
Leather, I
And he's chewing and chewing and chewing,
know. You know, he did eventually make a talking film.
Yeah, well,
The Dictator.
The Dictator.
Yeah.
And there you go. Because the weird thing is, where did Adolf Hitler ever get the idea that that little mustache was cool? I think it's because at the time he started to wear it, Charlie Chaplin was like a world.
Yeah.
He was a world star.
Yeah.
He was like Michael Jackson or something.
Yeah.
In his own time. He was super, super famous.
And he probably could learn how to do the moonwalk if he was younger. You know that? He probably could.
Oh, for sure.
Charlie Chaplin?
Oh, for sure.
He could learn to do
It
it.
was amazing. But yeah, there's a movie he did called The Dictator.
Yeah.
Where it happens actually before everything happens, but it is remarkably prophetic
Oh, absolutely.
about what's gonna happen.
Oh, yeah.
And he makes so much light of it. Oh, amazingly, he kept the mustache, but Charlie Chaplin was absolute devil, persona non grata in Nazi Germany because of that film.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the only color when he ever did it, right?
Yes, it was.
Color and sound.
That sound. That scene with his brother.
And doesn't he sing in it?
He
Or he pretends to sing?
pretends to sing or something.
Yeah.
But that scene with his brother before he decides he wants to make that film.
Yeah.
That scene was incredible.
Yeah.
His brother's like, he says, "You're not going to do it." He says, "Why not? You've been wanting me to do a talkie for a long time. This is my chance to do a talkie." He says, "Nobody wants to see a film about Adolf Hitler." And he throws that thing at him.
Yeah.
And he does it anyway. Oh,
Yeah.
the amazing. The guy that plays his brother, I think he was wonderful.
Yes.
He was wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, about the kid. The kid, he eventually grows up to be a world actor in one of our most famous comedy series in Hollywood history. He eventually plays Uncle Fester.
That's right. What's his name?
Coogan something.
Jackie Coogan.
Jackie Coogan.
That's right. Uncle Fester.
He plays Uncle Fester when he's an adult. So anyways, we forayed a little.
We got a ways off from Eddie.
But we're going to come back to Eddie Duchin now.
Okay.
Now, I've had some. Okay, I'll tell you what. I saw this movie when I was 10 years old, and I fell in love with the piano playing. It's wonderful piano playing. The music is brilliant. It's not Tyrone Power that's playing.
No.
I eventually found out that the actual pianist is none other than the inimitable Carmen Caballero.
Ooh, I remember him.
Carmen Caballero.
Yeah, he was quite a popular figure.
Oh yes, I mean he was
There's some black and white films of him.
Yeah, he's Cuban, and back then I guess a lot of Cubans were coming here who became famous. Desi Arnaz, Ricardo Montalban.
Yeah.
You know, all Cubans, and they all made a big hit. And you know, the music from Cuba came to the United States.
Absolutely.
They were having all those, mambo and all those other things.
Mm-hmm.
Ernesto Lecuona was making a big hit in the
Yep.
States as well. So, but anyways,
Tico Tico no Fuba. That's the one that we played. Yeah. Liberace plays it, and then he plays it twice as fast.
Yeah, he sure does. But anyways, Carmen Caballero. Now, I've listened to both recordings of Carmen Caballero and the actual recordings of Eddie Duchin. They are not similar.
No.
Carmen Caballero definitely shows much more facility at the piano than Eddie Duchin. Eddie Duchin plays the piano, and he has facility, mind you, okay? But it suits the band that he plays with. He's the band leader, basically. And, you know, he would have, during his shows, he would have singers and other instrumentalists to be guest soloists with his performances. And usually he's just sitting there. You can find this on YouTube, okay? There's actual YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
They're black and white. And you see Eddie Duchin sitting there at this grand piano, and he's just got a few saxophones, a couple trumpets, maybe a trombone or two, and that's it. Maybe a double bass player off on the side and a drummer in the back. And basically he just sits there and comps like this, and when it's time for a solo, he'll often play the melody or the themes in octaves, with every once in a while with a chord thrown in.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite recordings of Eddie Duchin is the one he plays. Let's see, Did You Ever See a Dream Walking? And it's a beautiful. His playing is beautiful. That movie. And the octaves when he plays in an octaves, he does these runs in octaves. They are smooth as silk.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think
it's wonderful.
when I think about it, when you're talking about that, I think of the difference, and it's not to crap on anybody.
Yeah.
But the difference between Count Basie and Duke Ellington.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Count Basie, I think, is a little bit Eddie Duchin-like.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the April in Paris, you know, and he has his little stuff he plays on the piano here and there. There's some cool boogie kind of pieces and some stuff that Count Basie did too. I mean, when he wanted to, and the boy had big hands.
Oh yeah, he sure did.
He could really get into it. I mean, he could play boogie woogie and stride sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think it has something to do with a kind of more cool style.
Yeah.
There was a clarinet band leader that was also kind of like that.
Yeah.
It was,
Benny Goodman.
Was it Benny?
It was Benny Goodman.
Later on, I mean, his earlier stuff is more like bigger band.
Yeah.
But as he went on, it got to be this kind of a little restrained, a little more subdued. But I think it had to do with cool.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's the kind of style that eventually evolved into beat music.
Yeah.
The beatnik stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because then, I mean, on the other hand, Duke Ellington could do it all.
Yeah.
He could play anything.
Yeah.
But his style was much more involved.
Oh, it's much more involved. The difference between Duke Ellington and the Count, Duke Ellington, whenever you heard the improvised parts, every note was written in the score. Every note was written in the score. So it sounded like it was being improvised, but no, these guys were reading right off the page. That's exactly what he did. Now, the Count did something different. Whenever you had a solo, you just got up there and winged it.
You know, I have a recording. It's got a black and white picture of Duke Ellington. Yeah. And it's his more serious, more serious compositions. Yeah. There's a symphony, I think.
Oh yeah.
Some other stuff on there.
Yeah, he did an arrangement of Nutcracker as well.
I also have then a multiple CD that I bought of famous black composers. There's a guy that paid for it all to be done in the 70s.
Yeah.
put some money into it. But the Duke Ellington thing is interesting because it's the American Composers Orchestra, which is playing all this stuff.
Yeah.
The poor guy, I mean, he had a huge career.
Oh, Duke Ellington.
Very well, he did fine by
absolutely.
himself. But maybe in terms of being recognized for what he could really do, racism was still way too.
Oh, yeah.
Keeping people in their place. What do you think of Florence Foster Jenkins? No, not her. Not her. Who's the other black lady who wrote?
Billie Holiday?
No, she was.
Bessie Smith?
No, not jazz. The classical composer from the Chicago area who Philadelphia Orchestra played or recorded her Third Symphony. I'll look it up. I can't think of her name at the moment. But she, more recent years, became really, really famous. And I heard some other stuff on NPR relatively recently.
Yeah.
Of a cop. One was a woman, one was a guy. Going a ways back a few decades. Very impressive stuff. And hopefully now people are starting to pull it out and play it as it should be and record it as well. But it's like with the opera company I'm working with, we're hoping to pull out Shirley Du Bois's Tom Tom, an opera that she wrote when she was doing her master's degree at Oberlin. Oberlin? Yeah. Oberlin. Hasn't been done since the early 50s. And it's a really great composition. It's great work. But it's kind of sad the way that, well, you know, black people, they play really good jazz, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you can't see the people up there play Beethoven and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, who's that black English family? One plays cello, one plays piano, one plays violin. Mason, Kane Mason is the family. Kane Mason is a cellist, and actually they're all three famous in their own way. There's a pianist, you look her up. She plays some Liszt. She's a very fine pianist. She's not, in my mind, up there with Volodus or Friedman.
Yeah.
Neither am I.
Yeah.
But
neither am I.
I mean, I think her playing is very good. I just found it a little, let's say, a little commercially square. But one could look for more imagination, especially Liszt.
Yeah.
But I mean, she plays it well, plays with certain needs. But the guy, the cellist, he was over here playing with symphony orchestras. I'm not sure if he took a job. But the name is Kanneh-Mason.
Wow.
There's three of them. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyways, Carmen Caballero would eventually haunt my life once again 30 years later.
Uh-oh.
Yep. So
meaning when you were 40-ish or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Because you saw this when you were 10.
Yeah. So Kathy, this is when Kathy and I were still dating. I wasn't married yet. And she was working at a retirement home. She was in between jobs. So she was working at a retirement home. And so she asked me one night, he says, honey, he says, we're looking for some stuff for our the place where I work. I was looking for more activities to fill the schedule for the residents there. It says they want to know if you will play the piano for them. That's all about you. So I said, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll do it. So I show up. I don't remember where the retirement home was, but they had this old upright, and remarkably, it was still in good condition. A little bit out of tune. It had these candle holder things, sticking on the sides of it. So that's how old it was. I mean, cool. The sucker was as high as this.
Yeah, one of those old monsters.
Yeah. And so, anyways, it stayed put. I mean, you really couldn't move it very much. So I sit there and I started playing. I started out with just playing some big band tunes, and then eventually I ran out of those and I started playing Chopin's Nocturne in E flat, right?
Ooh.
So Kathy comes over and she says to me, he says, honey, he says, stop. He says, what? He He says, well, one of the residents over there told us that she doesn't want to hear that song.
Oh.
So I look over, and there's this lady, and apparently there was this lady over there, and she had her back turned, and she's like this, and there's a priest right there talking to her.
Oh.
I says, wow. And so I was wondering what was going on over there.
Oh.
And she says, and Kathy goes over there and tries to see if she could calm down the lady.
Oh.
And she comes back, and she says, her husband was a pianist.
Oh, man.
She used to play that piece all the time. And
Oh.
she says that he's been gone for well over 20 years. And I says, well, who was the pianist? And I said, yeah. She said, we'll find out. She goes back. So I asked her, who was the pianist this lady was married to?
Yeah.
She goes back to find out. She comes back. He says, Carmen something? Caballero? He says, yeah. That's the wife of Carmen Caballero. I was like, holy crap.
Wow.
So, once again, that's my connection with Carmen Caballero.
Did you play Tico?
No, I didn't play Tico.
Did you play for her?
No, but
was she Hispanic or white lady or what?
I couldn't tell from the back. She had sort of a grayish white hair. I mean,
But you didn't go over and talk to her or anything?
Well, she was upset.
Oh.
I couldn't talk to her. I mean, the priest was right over there, and she was, he was trying to talk to her.
Oh.
And
man, I would have.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. She was
sorry. No, I admire your husband.
I know.
Who knows what kind of memorabilia she might have had?
I know, but she was.
Her stories.
I know, but well,
dude.
Yeah, I know.
Archaeologist, you really struck out with that.
Yeah, I know. I struck out. Think about this, folks. I mean,
I get it. I understand.
Knowing what I know about. Okay, and this is not to rag on Cubans, okay? This is nothing about rag on Cubans, but knowing who Desi Arnaz was, okay, and the infamy he created for himself, I just connected 2 and 3 together, and I didn't want to pry in on, something that maybe
did
she
he have a
had
story
bad
like
memories.
that?
Yeah, well,
Carmen Caballero.
He could have.
Carmen Montalban didn't, I don't think.
Montalban did not.
Yeah.
I
thought he was married to the same lady for a long time.
Oh, yeah, he was. And he was also a very devout Catholic. A very devout Catholic. Ricardo Montalban doesn't get that Catholic with their faith. So that was my brush with Carmen Caballero.
Cool.
Now, and who knows, if she was the second wife or the third wife. But that's what we had.
Anything else?
Anything else? Well, all right. So Kathy and I went thrifting, and I did find a couple gems here. This will be quick.
Is this still the movies? Oh no, recording.
Now these are CD recordings.
Okay, back to recordings.
And ironically, these are vocal recordings. We have here Mahler's Das Lied von der Erde, sung by Christa Ludwig.
Ooh.
Fritz Wunderlich.
Oh.
Conductor Otto Klemperer.
Oh yeah.
You have this?
No, I don't. But this is a famous recording. This is very famous.
Very famous?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad I picked it up.
This is really amazing. I don't know this, but Christa Ludwig was an amazing singer.
Soprano, yeah.
She did some work with Leonard Bernstein too. And then Fritz Wunderlich, people, he died in a car crash way too early.
Oh.
He was amazing tenor. He could have had it. I mean, in the short time that he did, he had a great career. But he got killed in a car crash and was dead in his middle to late 30s, something like that. Geez. And then Otto Klemperer, come on.
Yeah.
He's one of the great conductors that came out of the early 20th century. He'd been a student also. I believe he was connected with Richard Strauss. And is Jewish, very opposed to the Nazis. And as he was an older guy, because he was actually older, he ended up in England, and they created, I think, the Philharmonic or the new Philharmonic for him. The way they created an orchestra for Toscanini, and then even they did that for several of them. Toscanini in New York with the NBC Symphony, and Bruno Walter out in California with the Columbia Symphony. And then they put together the Philharmonia, or the new Philharmonia, I forget which one, for Klemperer. But wow, I love these songs. This is the Song of the Earth, Das Lied von der Erde. Yeah, good for you.
And I picked up a Sony recording of Mozart's Abduction of Seraglio.
Yeah.
Singers, Cheryl Studer,
Ooh.
Lisbieta Schmidtka, Kurt Streit, Robert Gamble, Gunter Miesenhart, Michael Heltau.
Yeah.
The orchestra, Vienna Symphony, conducted by Bruno Weil.
Bruno Weil, yeah.
You know it.
I only knew the first Cheryl Studer. I don't know the other folks. Konzertverein, the Wiener Staatsopernchor, Wiener Sinfonica. Bruno Weil was a good conductor. This is a wonderful opera. This is Mozart's, at the time, fascination with the Turkish culture.
Yeah.
If you go to Vienna, and you go to close to Neuburg, which is now attached to Vienna, but at one time was a little town, southeast of Vienna proper. But now it's kind of, they're all connected together. But close to Neuburg is where the Kloster is a word for monastery.
Yeah.
The monastery at Neuburg, and it's a big church, big place. This is where later on in his life and career, Bruno, to start over, Anton Bruckner, the great composer, was an organist at close to Neuburg, and that's where he worked, and so forth. And that's when he came out of the countryside eventually, was living in Vienna, pretty much. It's also one of the side streets there in close to Neuburg is the original house of the von Trapp family.
Oh, whoa!
It's a very interesting little historical place. There's only, it's like a neighborhood-ish, a large neighborhood in an American small to medium-sized city. There's not very much. You can walk it. The whole thing. I walked the whole area, around the whole, walked through the monastery, the grounds and everything, and walked around. And because somebody told me when I'd had schnitzel down not far from there, well, you guys go see the von Trapp house. And they told me what street it was on. I found the street. I came down there. And then, at the edge of close to Neuburg, there's it's been there for a long time, an inn. Meaning more like Friedrichian and sitting out and being nice. They got a big, huge outdoor area. And there's a shortish stone wall right there. It comes up not quite to your hips, my hips anyway. And you look over and, whoo, there's a big, serious drop off. Now, I'm not talking like up in the Rockies and it drops up 2,000 feet, but it's several hundred feet down. And it's a little on the sheer side. Well, there's a plaque right there. It's in German, but it says this was the closest that the Turkish troops got to Vienna. They got, as far as they could come, was down there at the bottom of that abyss where they gathered, but they couldn't find a way to come up the side. And it actually goes quite a ways out of this kind of sharp thing like this. If they'd gone out, God knows how many miles, come up around the high hills and mountains, they could have come in from the west, but that didn't happen. But it's very interesting because in Mozart's time, he wrote the Rondo alla Turca. And then there was a famous pianist who was in a competition with Mozart. Daniel Steibelt.
Clementi.
Was it Clementi?
It was Clementi.
And he was famous because he and his wife performed together. And she played cymbal, Yeah, I think
This is a different. That's a different company.
Well,
That was Beethoven. He took on Daniel Steibelt.
That was Steibelt. With the wife with the symbol.
Yeah,
But
Mozart had this duel with Clementi, though.
Oh, no, I'm not meaning them. No, this is Steibelt, because he eventually helped to make popular, in Beethoven's time, actually, they began to have all these little additional things on the piano. At one time, some of these pianos from the 18 teens and 20s had 7 different pedals on the instrument. There was a damper pedal, and there was una corda, due corde, and then the tre corda was you played without anything.
Wow!
But they actually had 2 shift pedals. One would play only on 1 string, and then there was one that would play on 2 strings. And then tre corda means you would play the piano. But then they had these different sound effects and things that they would do. And one was kind of a simple thing where you go, and you could, you know, this all came from the fascination with the Turkish Janissary bands that accompanied the armies.
The marches.
The Janissaries were an independent corps of men who served the emperor, but they had their own thing going. Initially, it was probably something comparable with the brown shirts and Hitler, or almost, not exactly, the SS was made to serve Hitler, but it's like they were kind of like their own thing, their own guard. They were famous, actually, not just for the music, but it was actually apparently for dancing in assassinations, bloodthirsty killing sometimes. I'm not sure about what. There were Cossacks that were part of the group, but there were these Janissary bands, and they played this music. And it was the kind of thing where the music inspired the soldiers to really fight. Well, the people in Europe, especially in Vienna, they could hear the band down there, beneath the city playing. And that kind of music became popular for a period of time. So this story, the Entführung aus dem Serail, is the abduction from the Seraglio. The Seraglio.
How do you say that again?
In German?
Yeah.
The Entführung. The Entführung. Ent often means to take something away. Entführung means to lead. Aus dem Serail, and which in English is Seraglio. But the Seraglio is, well, basically what they're doing is that they've captured this girl, and the guys have to break in, and they successfully get her out.
Oh, they get her out.
It's a comedy. It's a relatively long opera. It's like 3 hours.
Wow.
It's a good sized opera. And there's famously the tenor, Belmonte, it's a very highly written tenor part, very clearly for special. Mozart often did that. He wrote especially for the voices that he was premiering his works with.
Wow. And
the Belmonte arias are rather famous. Some good stuff, some good characters in it. I did this opera. I mean, I was in the orchestra and directed some stuff, things like that. And it's got some good music in it. It's an earlier one. I wouldn't say it's one of the great ones. It's not Don Giovanni, and it's not even Magic Flute, but it's pretty charming. Good opera. Good for you.
Well, folks, if you like our content,
you're going to open your present.
Oh, I can do that.
That's the last thing. I'm not.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Yeah. You just rip it probably somehow. So when we were talking about this, I was looking at Dover books, and I found this actually. This is not Dover, but it's a reproduction. It's available through Amazon. It was only like $5.40 or something. So I thought you might like to have a copy.
Thank you, Mark. You're welcome. Appreciate it.
This is The Life of Chopin by Franz Liszt.
Franz Liszt.
I read a little bit of it, and it's interesting. It's going to be interesting. It's not quick reading because The writing is very florid, interestingly as it would be from somebody like this.
Yeah.
You know, it's originally in French and it's translated. I was thinking about this earlier today. I'd read some of it in the last couple of days a little bit. That's long. I remember, you know, when you're in school and stuff, I enjoyed reading Shakespeare. You have to, I took a big class whole trimester and Shakespeare read 10 plays. Once you kind of like get into it, it's like getting into early music. Some places are kind of composed like just Walter or something. Once you've heard enough of it, you kind of you get it in your ears and your body, and you get it. That's like Shakespeare. You know, I love Shakespeare, the stories, and I love the stories that Charles Dickens would tell. But my God, I guess you have to appreciate it. But sometimes, you know, everybody say, "Well, you sound like Charles Dickens when you talk, because your sentences go on forever." But reading the stuff, I just sometimes I would just wish, why don't you just get to the point? What are you trying to say here?
Yeah.
But it's like later on, you know, you learn to appreciate things for what they are. Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past. This guy basically a cripple in his bed, seeing the world from his bed. And he goes into microscopic detail about things in the late 19th century France. Anyway, I was thinking just momentarily, this is just a side thought, about Liszt's memories of Chopin, what he talks about. It's interesting. He talks about his playing, his personality, and all these different things. But it's in these wrapped, fluffy clouds of immortal dreaminess. And,
oh gosh, wow.
And I was thinking, and it's interesting because he died in 1849. Right?
Yeah, 1849.
Me and Liszt were about the same age.
Yeah,
I think Liszt was a year younger.
A year younger.
And I was thinking when they write about him, part of what you get with this book is a lot of references to myth, Greek characters or historical Roman figures or legends or heroes, you know, from history or like legends.
Yeah.
And it made me think about this for some reason. You know, it's interesting. It becomes such a more pointed and specialized, very detailed society. And I was thinking, you know, it's interesting because Freud was another 30 years, 20 years anyway, 30 years, with Freud and Breuer, of coming up with his initial writings and thoughts and discoveries about images, you know, the archetype. Well, the archetypal images is more with Jung, but Freud was coming up with these repeatable images, finding people's dreams that he realized were symbolic and represented things. This is also before Schliemann. I think Schliemann, the archaeologist, 1876 or something like that. The German guy discovered Troy. Before that, everybody thought it was a myth, Paris and Helen of Troy, and he believed, no, it's true. And then he dug into that hill and found all this stuff. And eventually, I mean, they're still excavating probably 3 different sites in Turkey where Troy is just down, far down. They found the golden mask of Mycenae and all these things that were talked about, but everybody thought it was myth. In Liszt's time, when he wrote this thing, human beings didn't have access to Freudian and later Jungian concepts. So the way they described things was according to mythological perspectives of greatness, great people, and great achievements and things like that. And I think the reason I thought about this, I've been reading some Joseph Campbell. You know, Joseph Campbell was a famous professor and writer from Sarah Lawrence University. And basically created the 20th century academic discipline of mythology, studying world mythologies for symbolism and meanings and interpretations and things like that. Anyway, I just thought, good luck reading the book. I'm looking forward to giving it a shot, but it's one of those things where finally you get to the end of the book and go, whew. So basically he was a great man, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, since we're having Christmas in May, these are for you.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh,
Absolutely.
come on, you're overwhelming me here, buddy.
That's yours.
Have you ever listened to it for a while?
No, I haven't. I have another. I have different performers for that one.
You do?
Yeah, I do. I have maybe two.
But have
or
you
three
ever
days.
listened to this?
I have recordings of it, but not that particular one.
Why don't you borrow this from me and listen to it?
Okay, I'll borrow
Okay.
it from you. Okay.
But I
sure.
appreciate it very much.
Sure thing.
This is going to be, I think, I've heard it before,
You've
parts
heard
of it. I think I had a record in Wittenberg
Yeah.
years ago. But this is a really famous interpretation and recording that Wunderlich and Chris Ludwig and Otto Klemperer.
Okay.
It was a big deal back in the time when it was made.
Okay, I'll listen.
But
to
I
it.
appreciate having it because I don't own it.
You
That's
do now.
a historic novelty.
Boy, they're good-looking people in this.
Now, this one, you didn't give me this, right?
I did get.
Oh, you did give it to me?
You have the disc. It's still.
Oh, that's right. I gave him the cover, but didn't give him the
Yeah,
CD.
so you keep it. Go ahead.
Okay.
It's yours. I have another one.
Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Well, it's Christmas in May.
Yeah.
So everybody, if you're staying caught up with us,
Corey sponsoring. Well, they're not sponsoring us yet.
they're not
but
yet. He's
clean your-
open. He's open probably.
clean your pianos with this stuff. Okay, it's Corey. All right. Don't use furniture polish on your piano.
And if you do, cover the keyboard completely. Put the lid down.
Yes.
You don't want that crap to. Oh, for that matter, close the whole damn piano. Don't let any of that stuff get inside on the action, the strings, the keyboard, and the keys or anything like that. Now this is different because you spray this on and then wipe it all over the wood, right?
Yep. It's Corey.
But the stuff like hairspray, you will destroy your piano.
Okay.
My
Please use
dad
it.
used to tell his customers.
Anyway,
Well, no, he did it. He only said it to me.
Yeah.
He came home one time and said to Mom, and he said, "Why don't they just take a match and light the thing up? You know, they think it's like spraying hairspray on the street. How do they expect me to get that shit off of there?"
Well, folks, I hope you had a good time. I know we did. We always have a wonderful
Yeah, this
time
is
doing
fun.
this. This was great.
Well, I have to come up with some new music for what you call it, all
Pieces
all
considered.
pieces considered.
So, anyways,
APC.
yes. Anyways, if you liked our content, please ring that bell notification so you don't miss an episode. Give us a thumbs up. Tell your friends, family, and coworkers about us. You'll have a fun time.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, next week we're going to critique and talk about. Right, it's next week.
Oh yeah, that's right. I
Joseph
forgot about
Levine's
that.
book.
Oh
It's a little dinky book.
yes.
If you have it, why don't you read it and take a look at what he has to say? It's very readable. Which is very good.
It's not
I
very
wonder if
long.
his English was that good. But some really common sense stuff about music making. It doesn't get as long haired as was it Carl Leimer and
Yeah.
what's the famous old German pianist guy who I love so much? Played the French music so well. Gieseking.
It's okay.
And his teacher. There's a book by Carl Leimer and Walter Gieseking. Gets into some pretty hairy how to do this, how to do that stuff. But this is a little more general, but wonderful ideas about looking seriously at the
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll see you next week with this one.
Yeah, this could be lengthy. We could be arguing.
Ooh, I doubt it.
We'll see. Come back and join us.
Yeah. So this is Elmer,
That's Mark.
and we are Mark
And Elmer's PSI. Piano Scene Investigations. See you, folks.
Bye-bye.